Hello and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Thursday, February 29th. That's right. Happy Leap Day to those who celebrate. Frank Stampfl joined by Chris Towers and the award-winning Scott White. Today on the show, it's our first live mock draft, 12-team Roto, the standard 5x5 categories, and I will preview the draft in just a second. But first, big congrats to Scotty, who won the FSWA Award, Article of the Year Award for his article on the state of trading in fantasy baseball, or the lack thereof. Let's go.
Yes, it is true. I won best baseball article about how trading sucks and nobody wants to do it anymore. No, it was a fun article to write and included a lot of insights from people on social media with their own experiences with trading. And I worked in a lot of my own experiences with trading over the years and talked about the different reasons why I think it's just not as much fun to do anymore. And it went over well. So it's good to win this award. I pointed out when they called me up and had me on the radio show where they were announcing the awards. I pointed out, I've been a finalist for an FSWA award, occasionally over the years, but this is the first time I'd actually won since 2009 when I was Baseball Writer of the Year, which I'm pretty sure would set a record for biggest gap between awards. I'm not positive of that, but I would like to think so. I would like to have that record associated with me.
The award-winning, the record-setting Scott White, 2009.
In my own mind, anyway.
You are the Willie Mays of the FSWA awards. I believe that's the longest gap between MVP awards. So there you go.
All right.
I've always said Scott White is the Willie Mays of fantasy baseball.
We all do, duh. Great year, that 2009, by the way. Yankees won the World Series. I graduated high school, so there you go. Let's quickly explain the draft here before we get started. Again, standard 5x5 Roto. The categories: batting average, runs scored, home runs, RBI, and steals. On the pitching side, we have ERA, whip, wins, strikeouts, and saves. The lineup spots, Roto style, goes a little bit deeper into the player pool. 2 catchers, 1 of each infield position, a corner, a middle, 5 outfielders, a utility spot, and then 9 pitcher spots, which you can divvy up however you'd like. I am picking 4th. Scott is picking 5th overall, so that should be fun. Some snipes back and forth.
Intention, yeah.
Make some good content out of it. And Chris will be picking 11th. So we're going to go long on this live stream, so buckle in. This will be a 2-part podcast as well for those who are listening. And I'm going to pull up the draft board. And Scott, I think we're ready to go. You are the committee.
Okay. All right. Let's get this started.
And here we go. Boom. Up and running. First overall pick is...
It's got to be Acuna.
Well, yeah. But it's Darren Doc Eisenhower. So we'll see who the Doc takes.
What if it wasn't Acuna, huh?
That would give us something to talk about. But it is Acuna, as it should be.
As it should be.
In every league.
There was one NFBC league where Acuna fell to 3rd.
No. Really?
And I have yet to see a good explanation for it.
Because Noel V. Marte was first.
Noel V. Marte was the first pick.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I think Bobby Witt went 2nd, and I think that was just because the person didn't realize that Acuna went 3rd.
Right. He's got to feel so bad over that. Okay, so in our draft, it's Julio Rodriguez 2nd and Bobby Witt 3rd, which is the consensus for Roto. I prefer Bobby Witt 2nd. I prefer Bobby Witt 2nd because you might be getting a 10 steal advantage there, which is the main attraction to taking these players at the top of round 1 is all the big number of steals. They're going to give you the big steals advantage. Outfield, getting one of in a 5 outfielder league, it's especially difficult to fill. And as a general rule, I do put a high priority on getting one of those first 9 outfielders, those first round caliber outfielders. But I think shortstop in this format is pretty shallow too. I run out of options I like there more before the draft is even halfway over. So I think I can justify taking Bobby Witt over Julio Rodriguez if I don't get that first pick to get Acuna.
speaking of justification, I guess I have to justify my pick because I had 4th overall. And as soon as I saw the draft order come out earlier on Wednesday, I texted Scott and I said, I know what you're doing. I know exactly what you're doing. You gave me 4th overall pick to make sure that I would not take Corbin Carroll, that I put my money where my mouth is. And that's exactly what I did. The top 3 picks, as we mentioned, Acuna, Julio, Bobby Witt. I go ahead and take Mookie Betts. I've said dating back to last year, all offseason. Not that I'm completely out on Corbin Carroll. I have him a little bit lower in the first round because of the past injury with the shoulder. Maybe that's overblown. I want to be as safe as possible in the first round. And so I took Mookie Betts. I do like that flexibility that he awards me. It was between him and Freddie Freeman, but being able to choose second base or outfield throughout the draft, I like that flexibility. So
you've fallen right into my trap here, Frank, because I set up the draft order, you 4th, so that you'd be forced to pass on Corbin Carroll there, and me 5th, so that I would get Corbin Carroll there. And that's what I'm doing. Haven't had a chance for a Corbin Carroll build yet. But I think I think it's a clear top 4 in Roto. I think Ronald Acuna, Julio Rodriguez, Bobby Witt, Corbin Carroll, what they do as hitters, along with the massive stolen base output they're going to give you. And we talk a lot about Acuna, the power speed, Bobby Witt, the power speed, the historic combination that they provided. Same one for Carroll last year. Guys who hit 25 homers and stole 50 bases in the season, he was only the second guy to do that since 1990 when a very young Barry Bonds did it. So that top 4 is just not a caliber of player we're used to seeing in Roto. And so even with whatever shoulder concerns exist for Carroll, which I think are pretty minimal, I'm happy to take him 4th, in this case 5th, because you passed on him at number 4.
I'll remind you of the old adage, Scott. You can't win your fantasy baseball draft in the first round, but you can lose it. So I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to take Mookie Betts, which is what I did. Scott took Corbin Carroll. Next 3 picks after that, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, and Freddie Freeman. And Chris, this kind of plays into what you were talking about the other day, where you said, if I don't have the first pick, I wouldn't mind having the 8th pick, or I guess in this case, even the 9th pick, because Freeman and Kyle Tucker go 8 and 9. I think you got to feel pretty damn good about getting either of those guys.
Even I know Aaron Judge has the concerns about his health, but I think he's absolutely that caliber of player.
And he just went 10th.
Yeah. Which is, ask me about my first pick after I make my next pick. Can I make that request? Because I'm pretty sure RJ's watching, and I wanna see how his 2 picks go before I make my next pick.
He's the one guy picking after you. But we do have to say you picked Spencer Strider 10th. Yes. So you're going with the pitcher in round 1.
He's my number 10 player. He's my number 10 player. So that it's been a chalky draft for me so far.
11th is where you picked him. Sorry, not 10th.
Oh, sorry, 11th. Yeah.
Yeah. So after Freddie Freeman went 8th, Kyle Tucker 9, Aaron Judge went 10, Chris took Spencer Strider 11. I was wondering if you were going to make that move because, frankly, this is probably the lowest you'll see him fall in any draft this year. So seems like a pretty fair spot to get Spencer Strider. And then at the turn, RJ White takes Trey Turner and Jose Ramirez. So Chris, you are back up, and I will ask you about your first round pick.
And this is why I wanted to wait, because I'm going to try something, and we're going to see how this goes.
Don't you dare, Chris.
I'm going to try things.
Oh,
I double tap.
Pocket aces.
I haven't done pocket aces in years. I think Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider are the clear top 2 pitchers. Pretty much everyone agrees with me. I think Corbin Burns is like a half a tier behind them after the move to Baltimore. So there was no way he was going to get back to me. And by the time it gets back to the end of the 3rd round, which is the next time I'd be picking, 35th overall, you tend to see a pretty big teardrop at starting pitcher, but there are still some pretty good hitters left. So I want to see how this works, because I've talked a lot about
round 3.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about how I want 2 aces to anchor my staff, and then I'm going to not worry about pitching for a long time.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
This is the most extreme version of that.
I feel like it's the opposite, where the end of round 3, that's where the MVP caliber bats run out. And hopefully, like a Kevin Gausman or Luis Castillo is still there for me to take. But if not, I'll just take the best of what's there. But you think it's the opposite. You think
Yeah, I think like the drop off from Gosman, Wheeler, Castillo to like Gallen, Kirby, Lopez, I think is significant enough that I want to see what it looks like when I do this. I'm not saying this is the ideal way to start your draft from the number 11 spot, but I want to try it out.
After Chris took Garrett Cole 14th, we saw Matt Olson get paired up with Aaron Judge. I mean, there's an outside chance you get 100 home runs from your top two players there between those two picks. And then we see Yordan Alvarez and Shohei Ohtani go 16th and 17th. So Kayla Waltz did the Astros double tap with Yordan and Kyle Tucker in the first round. Raymond Atherton did Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. My gosh, that is so fun. Oh, and that's about the latest you'll see Shohei Ohtani go as well. So 17th overall. And then Bryce Harper goes 18. That was a team that started with Juan Soto. So just kind of recapping some first and second round picks for people to get an idea of what the player pairings are. And then Austin Riley 19th. And Scott, you're back up. Corbin Carroll was your first round pick. And this is pick 20 overall.
So this is another reason I wanted to pick 5th overall, is because the 20th overall pick I thought could be stressful, and it is stressful. Yordan Alvarez didn't last that long. Shohei Ohtani, Bryce Harper. If any of them lasted that long, that would have been an ideal scenario, but they didn't. They're all gone. I could think about taking Corbin Burns here. He's still out there, right?
Correct.
But I'm not going to. I'm going to go ahead and fill shortstop, which I think is the second most stressful hitter position to fill early.
Why you got to do that?
I'm going to take Francisco Lindor. It's a distant second. It's way behind outfield, but I have seen Lindor slide to early in round 3 in 12-team leagues before. And so to take him in the middle of round 2 feels a bit like a resignation, but I don't think he's going to make it to my next pick. And he is my top player remaining on the board. I could go, if I wanted to stick to hitters, I could go Rafael Devers. I could go Pete Alonso. Those positions are a lot deeper in my mind. So I'd rather have Lindor. He gives me steals in addition to power. And I mean, we all talked about how he's our favorite shortstop to draft. It's a little on the early side for him, but well, I say that, but he is my top ranked player.
Yeah, he went 32nd in my Tout Wars draft the other day, which is an OBP league, which I guess, I don't know. He's probably about as valuable in OBP as batting average. He's not great in either.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably a little earlier than he was likely to go, but I can't imagine he would have made it back to you.
Right. A long shot for sure.
No, because I would have taken him with the very next pick. So
okay, there you go. Okay.
And, obviously, I hate the pick, Scott, and so thanks for doing that. But yeah, I wanted a little bit more speed to pair with Mookie Betts in the first round. You took Lindor, so I went ahead and took Rafael Devers. I will explain why I did that after my third round pick. Just going to wait and see who makes it back to me. After I took Rafael Devers, Corbin Burns went 22nd, and Corey Seager 23rd overall. Still waiting to learn more news on the sports hernia surgery opening day.
That's an optimistic pick for Corey Seager. A lot of times you see him slide to late in round 3, even early in round 4, and he's going 23rd overall here. I don't necessarily think it's wrong, but it is on the more optimistic side. It is not as far as we normally see him slide with the hernia surgery and his timetable still being a question.
There has been some progress though. Like he's been cleared for physical activity at least. So he's moving around at least. I got him 33rd overall in Tout Wars. So that was one where Lindor went off the board. I took Seager, who does benefit. I mean, he's another one who's just elite in both average and on-base percentage, but he's very, very good in both.
Mm-hmm. So over the past 2 weeks over at the NFBC, I wanted to quickly see where Corey Seager is going. The ADP
is a league that has no IL spots.
Correct. 28.7. So a little bit past where he went in this draft. After Corey Seager, Marcus Semien and Pete Alonso at the turn. So start your team with Acuna, and then you come back and you get Pete Alonso and Marcus Semien. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Kind of cover all bases, right? So
It's
power, a little bit of speed.
I think the trendy way to approach the Acuna pick is what Scott did in TGFBI, and I think a lot of people are doing in TGFBI, where you go Acuna and then double tap pitchers. That I think that's become kind of the trendier approach, but maybe more so in a 15-team league where Alonso and Simeon are off the board already by the time you pick.
Yeah, I do want to get into what if you have the first pick and take Acuna strategy a little bit, because I was forced into that in TGFBI, I think, because everybody focused so much on hitters that at picks 30 and 31, it was clearly Wheeler and Gausman were the best two players available in that draft. Normally, I wouldn't do that. But he took Acuna in this draft. Doc Eisenhower took two hitters in addition to Acuna, knowing it's going to be another 24 picks until he picks again. And what is the starting pitcher pool going to look like at that point? Maybe like a Yoshinobu Yamamoto or a Pablo Lopez, Tarek Skubal. Maybe somebody like that'll be there.
No way.
You're shaking your head, Frank. You don't even think they'll be there?
No. I'm just saying Yamamoto after his debut today. There's no way he makes
that was
it.
like, well, it was actually a little disappointing how good he was.
I know,
because he only threw 19 pitches in his 2 innings, and I wanted to watch more of him.
But my point is, knowing the long wait and knowing that Acuna already gives you such a head start in all the hitting categories, do you feel like you should really take at least one pitcher? I don't know that I would take two in most cases, but one pitcher with the second and third choice at the turn there, the 2-3 turn.
I think this is a conversation, I guess, for later on, like when we have hindsight, right? It's obviously easier to say then. I mean, if I was on the clock, I think what Doc did there was totally fine. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. It'll be
I'm leaning yes. Given the long wait, especially, and the fact that Acuna gives you such a head start in all the hitting categories. The idea is to balance all the categories, pitching included. And so having a true ace, it might set you up in the most optimal scenario to splurge for that. Yeah,
that's something that we'll be watching to see what the pitching staff winds up looking like there. After Pete Alonso, Zach Wheeler went 26th overall, Ellie De La Cruz at 27, and I took Ozzy Albies. So I wanted to wait to my third round pick because I was debating Devers versus Ozzy Albies in the second round, and then I got Ozzy Albies in the third round. So
there you go.
Totally fine with the way that worked out. Obviously, he doesn't give you a ton of speed, but 10 to 15 steals, kind of helps you out across the board. I wish I had a little bit more speed, but the start here, I've got Ozzy Albies, Rafael Devers, and Mookie Betts. So obviously covering a bunch of the offensive categories. We'll see how the pitching staff turns out. And then Scott, with the next pick, you took Jose Altuve. So your team through 3 rounds, you have Corbin Carroll, Francisco Lindor, and Altuve.
Yeah, I tend to start hitter. And I feel like I got studs at 3 positions where the stud drop off comes pretty early in my mind. I'm getting steals from all of them. I have a good batting average foundation, especially with Altuve there, making up for however Lindor is short in batting average. So yeah, I feel like this is a strong start. I'm happy with it.
All right. And then after you took Jose Altuve, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. went off the board. Kevin Gausman, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who we'll talk about what he did in just a second. And then Luis Castillo. So Yamamoto going ahead of Castillo. The more starts we see from this guy, again, it's a bit of an overreaction. It's his first start. I get it. But we did want to see how he looks, obviously, coming over from Japan. 16 of 19 of his pitches for strikes. 2 shutout innings, 3 strikeouts, 0 walks. And if you guys saw the highlights, some of these strikeouts, they didn't stand a chance. Pitching is ahead of hitters at this point, but like he struck out some legit major leaguers. Marcus Semien, Nate Lowe, and Leody Taveras. There were some pretty bad swings. So he looked awesome.
That splitter, Yamamoto splitter, was hyped as immediately it's going to be the best splitter in baseball. It was compared to like Kevin Gausman's. It was compared to not Shohei Ohtani's, Kodai Senga's, and it delivered in the first 2 innings. Now I do wonder, because it clearly wasn't anywhere close to the strike zone, and I do wonder if they'll just learn not to swing at it. I don't know if he's able to disguise it as a fastball well enough, then I guess that won't be an issue. But that would be the one issue that maybe might make it less effective than it initially appears. But I'm totally on board with Yoshinobu Yamamoto as a top 10 starter and an ace in fantasy. I don't think there's as much downside risk as some people are presenting.
All right. Well, let's finish out round 3 and let everyone know what happened here. After Luis Castillo, Michael Harris 34th, Chris took Gunnar Henderson, and then Luis Robert. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll get into round 4. We'll ask Chris about his picks. We'll do that right after this.
The madness doesn't just happen.
Yo, get ready!
And although it's marked on our calendars each year, it's built by moments of mayhem before.
And the crowd goes crazy!
And it begins to bubble long before it bursts. Sure, madness and March may go hand in hand, but it starts right here.
Welcome back in. We are into the 4th round of our live 12-team Roto mock draft, and RJ White kicked it off with Zach Gallen, and then Chris took Bo Bichette, Pablo Lopez, and Tyler Glasnow. Chris, so you started your team 2 starters. You got Strider and Garrett Cole, and then you came back around with Gunnar Henderson and Bo Bichette. What do you think so far?
I think Scott was right when it came back to me. I think I had my top 3 players were all hitters, so it's not like I hated the hitters or liked the pitchers more, but yeah, I feel like I could have gotten by easier with Pablo Lopez and Tarek Skubal as my top 2 pitchers. I think those were the top 2 pitchers left for me the last time I picked. Or
I mean, you could have split the difference.
Pablo Lopez, yeah.
Take either Strider or Cole and
Yes.
pair him with either Skubal or who was the other one?
It would have been Zach
Glasnow?
Allen or Pablo Lopez, probably.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, look, I like Gunnar Henderson. I like Bo Bichette, but obviously neither of them is an elite power hitter or an elite stolen base guy. So, they're more good at multiple things rather than great at multiple things. So, I guess because I would have taken Trey Turner if I hadn't taken Spencer Strider at 10. So, or if I hadn't taken Garrett Cole, I would have taken probably Shohei Ohtani.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we could walk through what that, like Spencer Strider and Shohei Ohtani, or
Yeah, I like that more.
yeah, I think I probably like that more too.
Yeah. So look, we're trying different things out throughout a mock draft, and this is exactly why we do it, to try and talk through it and see maybe what we would have done differently if this were a real draft. So after we saw Pablo Lopez, Tyler Glasnow went 40th overall, then Manny Machado, George Kirby, and Mike Trout. And then we got to Scott, who took his first starting pitcher, Tarek Skubal, who averaged 97.5 miles per hour on the fastball here.
I want to ask a question in a dumb way, but that opens a conversation. Is Tarek Skubal throwing too hard? Now, I don't actually mean that. I think it's great that Tarek Skubal's averaging 98 miles per hour as a lefty with his fastball. That is bonkers. This is a guy who had Tommy John surgery way back in, I think, college, and then had a flexor strain surgery 2 years ago. He's never thrown more than, I think, 140 innings at the major league level. He's coming off an 80-inning season. I think there's some risk to the way he throws, especially given how quickly his velocity is.
I mean, it's the Jacob deGrom thing all over again. You're already winning Cy Youngs with the velocity you have. Why do you need to add another 2 miles per hour? Your body can't withstand that torque, clearly. And so I think that's a fair concern. After one spring start, it's not going to change where I draft Tarek Skubal. He was my top ranked pitcher even before he was throwing that hard in the spring.
I'm not moving him up, and I'm not moving him down.
Exactly. So yeah, I think I think he qualifies as more or less an ace of fantasy. I said he's my pick to win AL Cy Young this year, so I'm happy that I'm able to get a pitcher that good after beginning hitter. at 44th overall here. Tarek Skubal is who I took.
But I think he's right there with Tyler Glasnow in terms of being like the ultimate risk reward. I think.
I mean, you got a 30-year-old who's never.
No, Glasnow's riskier.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But in terms of
he is,
and Skubal is probably a better bet to get to 150 innings than Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah.
But the upside is this is the best pitcher in baseball on a per inning basis. That's what Tarek Skubal basically was last season. I think among pitchers who threw at least 50 innings, he was 4th in expected ERA, and that's including like it's him and 3 elite closers who threw like 60 innings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all 3 of them got hurt at some point during the season. That is the upside. But I think there's a lot of red flags there as well.
Mm-hmm. After Tarek Skubal went, I was on the board and I was debating starting pitcher. Obviously, a pitcher I do like to build around quite a bit was there in Logan Webb. I opted to pass because there was an outfielder who could provide me some speed. Randy Arozarena, spoke about him on the outfield preview. He's very inconsistent throughout the course of the season, but by the end of the year, usually just winds up with his 2020 batting average, 2020 home runs and steals, 250 to 260 batting average. Counting stats are fine. He's just kind of okay across the board. He doesn't hurt you anywhere. So I took him, wanted some more speed, and we'll see how the pitching staff winds up. But yeah, I did miss out on Logan Webb because he went 2 picks later. After Arozarena, there was Royce Lewis, the aforementioned Logan Webb. At the turn, Cole Ragans and Grayson Rodriguez. More on that in a second. Nolan Jones went 50th overall. We are into the 5th round now, and Freddie Peralta.
Okay.
I'm on the board. I will just quickly make my pick, and I will take Framber Valdez. I think he's kind of similar to Logan Webb in that he's going to give me a solid base of innings and solid ratios. Maybe not the most strikeouts, but I could build around that.
Is that your second pitcher?
That's my SP1.
Okay.
Scott, you're on the
I want, before we got into my pick, I wanted to follow up. So Doc Eisenhower, after taking 3 hitters, Acuna, and then 2 other hitters, he comes back in round 4 and 5 and pairs Cole Ragans as his ace with Grayson Rodriguez, 2 high upside pitchers, and it could work out. I wonder though. So what would the pitcher have been in round 2 and 3 that he could have taken instead?
I think
could have
Wheeler
been Zach
Wheeler.
Yeah.
Gosman. Yeah.
And so instead of the hitters that he took, which were
Simeon and
Alonso, like it's okay. So maybe he could have had Cody Bellinger instead of Pete Alonso, and then Wheeler instead of Grayson Rodriguez. I think I would like that more. But
I think I'd rather have the hitters there.
Okay.
I think it's okay. I just think I have a problem with, I guess, the pitchers that he took in the order. But I mean, if those are your top ranked pitchers, then that's fine. But
yeah, I mean, there's still Aaron Nola out there. There was still Framber Valdez, who you took, Frank.
Yeah. Which is what I probably would have taken in innings eater type with one of these high upside names instead of just taking 2 high upside guys. And I think I would have liked that more. But
he was selling out for upside, clearly.
Yeah.
And Reagan's, I mean, I like Reagan's going that early, but it's 48th. I keep hearing from people, I keep getting Cole Ragans around pick 100, and it just never comes anywhere close to that in our draft. So I never end up drafting him for as much as I like him. It's frustrating. I ended up taking Cody Bellinger with my 5th round pick here, a second outfielder. I think outfield is the highest priority position in the early rounds. Cody Bellinger, we know where he's going now, and it's the same place where he found so much success last year. So that is at least one worry that's been eliminated. Okay, it won't be the venue that brings him down. There are still worries, of course, but it's a multifaceted outfielder at a time when outfielder is going to drain really quickly. And in a format where you go really deep into the outfield rankings. So I decided to prioritize a second outfielder with Bellinger over a second starting pitcher.
There are some great hitter values here in the 5th round. Now that I'm looking at everything, catch people up. Freddie Peralta went right before my pick. That was the 3rd pick of round 5, pick 51. I took Framber Valdez. Scott took Cody Bellinger. Then CJ Abrams, Jazz Chisholm, and Adolis Garcia.
Abrams. Say that name again.
Jazz Chisholm. What did I say?
Okay. Jazz. I don't know. I can't even.
You pronounce the H.
Jazz Chisholm or something like that.
Apologies. Adolis Garcia in the 5th round and CJ Abrams seem like pretty damn good values. And if I wasn't hosting a podcast while doing this draft,
oh, don't blame your job.
I might have taken Abrams just because I feel like he fits what the team needs. I needed more speed, but I didn't even realize he was available. So bad job by me. But those are, I think, really good picks in the 5th round. So.
You take somebody like Mookie Betts ahead of somebody like Corbin Carroll. You're going to have to be conscientious about speed after doing that. And you weren't, Frank. You blew it.
No, I got Randy Arozarena. He's awesome. After Adolis Garcia, we saw Nolan Arenado, Logan Gilbert. Chris took Kyle Schwarber. Then at the turn, RJ took Aaron Nola and Max Fried. We're into the 6th round now, where Chris took Christian Yelich and O'Neal Cruz was the next pick. So
the way Randy Arozarena bulked up this offseason, I don't think he's thinking about stolen bases. Have you seen his biceps?
I was going to say, like, you remember Doug Martin, the running back for Tampa Bay? His nickname was the Muscle Hamster.
That's right.
I think Randy Arozarena's nickname should be Muscle Hamster.
It reminds me of like Ron Gant going back even further.
He looks super jacked.
Biceps, like too muscular. I worry. But anyway,
I read about
let's
it.
Get back to the picks.
I read about it. I haven't actually seen it though, but you might be onto something. Again, I
look at my spring training roundup. I got a link to it.
I probably blew it not taking Abrams.
I do want to point out you can kind of see the sacrifices I'm having to make for my hitter spots because of the double tap pitchers at the start. Taking Schwarber there, need some power, need to get a 40 homer guy, but obviously I'm sacrificing a ton of batting average. So I had to follow it up with a good source of batting average. I hope Christian Yelich is going to hit 280 something this year. And I passed up on like Nico Horner, who I think is probably a better bet for batting average and stolen bases, because I didn't want to sacrifice power to make up for it. And so I'm juggling a lot of plates here, spinning a lot of plates in a way that I think is okay, but it feels a little dicey.
After you took Yelich, O'Neal Cruz, Paul Goldschmidt, Matt McClain, who went 65th overall. I feel like he's been dropping a little bit past that since the oblique injury. But if you really like him, you probably got to take him there. And then Alex Bregman and Bobby Miller. Scott, you are back up. And let's remind everybody of what your team looks like. And you have Jose Altuve, Francisco Lindor, Cody Bellinger, Corbin Carroll, and Tarek Skubal. What happens now?
Yeah, what happens now? I'd hope there'd be a better starting pitcher here than there is. So maybe I regret that Bellinger pick. People have been avoiding closers in a way we're not used to. That would be the chalk pick. I hate taking closers, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take a guy I draft very often, Josh Lowe, as a third outfielder. So I'm well ahead of pace. I'm well ahead of where I need to be to make sure I don't have a problem in the outfield. I have 3 already. That's comforting to me. I'm well ahead of where I need to be to make sure I don't have a stolen base problem, because all 5 of my hitters, Corbin Carroll gets a ton, obviously, but also Francisco Lindor, Jose Altuve, Cody Bellinger, and Josh Lowe, they're all going to make significant stolen base contributions. So I'm in really good shape with stolen bases now, and that's going to open up a lot of options for me with my future hitter picks. But I do need to address my pitching soon, and I hope these closers go so that I don't have to be the one who takes them.
I've got a bone to pick with you, Scott. I know you like Josh Lowe, but kind of feels like you're overdoing it on steals just so that I can't get them.
I did. That's who you were going to take, right?
That's what I think. That's what I think you're doing
it
right
may be overdoing it at steals. It legitimately may be, but
I mean, yeah, you're up to like 150.
So
already, that's about what you're aiming for. The whole, like, that's about middle of the pack, the whole draft, right?
Okay, so I don't need to draft a steals guy again, basically.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, I love to draft like Jackson Chourio. I love those base stealing second basemen, but we'll see how that influences my decisions moving forward. The fact that I have such a nice steals total already through 6 rounds.
Yeah, so I needed an SP2 as well, and my top ranked pitcher was Jesus Luzardo, who I think pairs well with someone like Framber Valdez. Maybe some whip concerns, so I'll have to, be cognizant of that in the future. But Luzardo, up over 10K per nine last year. He's going to give you lots of strikeouts, good ballpark to pitch in, assuming he doesn't get traded from Miami. I think he's a totally fine SP2 to pair with someone like Framber Valdez. After that, Adley Rutschman went 70th overall, and that feels like a pretty good value. I think he was my top ranked hitter, and I thought about taking him. I just don't usually take a catcher that early, so it kind of threw me off a little bit, but I did debate taking him there. It feels like a really good value at this point. Same thing with Nico Horner. I don't really want to fill my middle infield spot yet. I have Ozzy Albies at second. I guess, does Nico Horner have shortstop? He might, right?
He does. Yeah, he does.
So I could have done that, and I blew it again. So after Nico Horner, Yuri Perez, that's the other pitcher I was thinking about. I think, again, he would have paired well with Framber. I guess kind of similar pitcher to like what we're expecting from Luzardo anyway, right? You probably expect something similar from Yuri. Obviously, the upside is higher, but maybe the downside is lower. I don't know.
I'm thinking about my next pick, so you're going to have to finish that thought yourself.
Sorry, what was the question?
Forget it. At the turn, Wyatt Langford was the first pick of round 7. Pick 73. Oh, my goodness. So I know there was an article that came out from Jeff Passan. I believe it was yesterday when we're recording this. So on Tuesday, February 27th, there was an article about how the Rangers are enamored with Wyatt Langford, and they're legitimately giving him every opportunity to make the opening day roster. Chris, even with that, 73rd, too early for Wyatt Langford?
Yes, I think so. I mean,
it'd be too early for Jackson Chourio, I think.
So I think the problem, though, is when you're picking at the end of the draft. To a certain extent, you just kind of have to throw ADP out of the window if you want a guy, because there's no guarantee. Now, if you base it on ADP, Wyatt Langford's going even lower than, I think 94 would be what his next pick opportunity would have been. So he could have still had the opportunity to take Wyatt Langford there, but that is the thing you have to keep in mind as you're looking at the results of any individual draft is, while ADP tells you one story, if you are picking first or second or 12th or 11th, you kind of have to throw it away and get, if you want the guy that you want, there's no guarantee they're going to come up the next time. I think he probably would have still been there the next time around, but there's certainly no guarantee.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I am back on the clock here. The previous 2 picks after Langford were Josh Hader. So the first closer goes, and JT.
Finally, round 7, the first closer goes.
And I'm going to go ahead and grab my third starting pitcher. And I mentioned in our pitching previews, I like to get 3 of my top 30, and then I'll back off the position for a little bit, and I'll jump back in later on. So I took Zach Eflin, and I think he pairs really well because he is a low whip pitcher. So I think that works just very well, again, with Luzardo and Framber Valdez as my top 2 starting pitchers. Scott, you are back up, and I believe through 6 picks, you have 5 hitters and 1 pitcher.
I just can't get over the fact that we're here in the middle of round 7 and 1 closer is gone. He just went.
Sounds like you should take a closer, Scott.
I'm not going to, because the only reason I ever take closers is because other people force me to. They create this scarcity that I'm forced to react to. They help in one category. I understand they help a little bit in ERA and whip, but they don't give you the volume to make a huge difference there. And, it's a deep class anyway. Like I said, 16 players I feel like have more or less the same upside. The fact you took Zach Eflin, I think, makes it obvious I have to take a starting pitcher because we're getting pretty close to the glob now. I'm taking one who gives me a lot of strikeouts, Blake Snell.
Well,
77th overall.
That's assuming he pitches this year, Scott.
He's going to pitch this year. I don't know that he'll be ready to pitch the first timer through the rotation, given that he's not participating in spring training yet because he doesn't have a team. But he will have a team very soon. And I think this is a good value for him. There's obviously some risk. I have him as one of my bust candidates for this year. So we don't even really need to get into that. I think it's already factored into the cost clearly. We know what the upside is. We know what the strikeout upside is. Certainly, he's a good bet to deliver on that. And he's sliding just because he hasn't. I got 77th in this draft. I feel like is good value, but I got him 90th in TGFBI and was absolutely thrilled with that.
Yeah, so I mentioned I updated my rankings earlier in the week, and I did move Blake Snell down. I think he's my SP21, and I moved him down to, how about that? 77th overall, Scott.
There you go.
Exactly where you took him. So, yeah, I think he should drop a little bit based on earlier drafts, but this is the appropriate range that I would be looking to target. And
you know, as soon as he signs, though, he's going to shoot back up in ADP.
Yes.
But is that warranted, though? Because there are risks with him starting later in camp. So shouldn't those be?
Oh, there is. I laid that out, but people are just afraid of, I don't know. When players haven't signed yet, their value gets suppressed to a ridiculous level, as if they're not going to sign. I don't know why that happens. So just the fact that he doesn't have a team right now is causing him to drop too much, and the fact that he does have a team tomorrow or next week or whenever it is going to cause his value to rise. Maybe too far, but it'll cause it to rise some for sure.
All right. After you took Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, Ketel Marte, Edwin Diaz, Ha-Sung Kim, Gleyber Torres, and Chris, you selected Devin Williams as I believe that's the third closer off the board at pick 83. And it feels like all these closer values are exactly that.
Oh, they're
No. Back that out. Sorry. I meant to pick someone completely different. I'm sorry. Can we back that out?
Our first back out of the
do
line.
it, Chris. But I'm giving you a disapproving look.
I'm sorry. I clicked the wrong button.
We are mad.
I meant to take Brian Reynolds.
And that is a great pick too. Brian Reynolds just kind of, as I mentioned on our outfield preview, just kind of keeps things moving. Doesn't hurt you anywhere. He's solid. He's a high floor play, and I believe he's probably your third outfielder now.
Third outfielder, yeah. So I've got Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole. I've got Gunnar Henderson, Bo Bichette, Christian Yelich, Kyle Schwarber, and Brian Reynolds.
And then you backing out the Devin Williams pick actually worked out for RJ, because at the turn, he took Christian Walker and Devin Williams. We are into the 8th round, and Chris, you are back up.
And to be clear, I would have taken Ketel Marte or Gleyber Torres. They both went right before my pick. I would have preferred to have very similar profiles to Brian Reynolds, but would have preferred them at second base. But one thing I'm going to try to do here, I just took William Contreras, and because I have the Strider-Cole combination, I'm trying to make up ground in the hitting categories. And one way that I can probably do that is lock in an advantage at catcher. And William Contreras is someone that we expect to have a playing time edge on most of the catching position. We think he might be, if not the best, the second best catcher, the second best hitting catcher. So I'm hopeful that is one way that I can make up for what I'm lacking by missing out on those first round caliber hitters.
All right. Well, after you took William Contreras, Tristan Casas goes off the board at pick 87. And I saw somebody ask me this on Twitter today, that Tristan Casas is yet to make his spring debut. Is that something we should be worried about?
No.
Apparently he's dealing with an illness, some kind of flu. Yeah. If it was, some kind of structural type injury, then yeah, maybe, but an illness, nah, not worried about that.
I mean, a lot of players are just making their spring debut. I've seen a lot of reports in the last day or two. So-and-so is Mike Trout's making his spring debut. Like,
yeah,
it's real. It's February,
Like Jarren Duran, I think, has not played this spring, and he's coming back from, I believe, toe surgery.
Mm-hmm. Pitchers are different, obviously, because there's a buildup, but hitters, they need like a week.
But that's not to say I'm concerned about Jarren Duran, but that's more concerning than Tristan Casas.
I agree with that completely. Let's take our second break. When we return, Scott should be on the clock. We'll talk about that right after this.
We give thanks to the athletes who took big risks, who beat the odds despite being oddballs because of their skin. But to change the status quo, you have to be willing. This is the month we remember. But more importantly, dream of something bigger.
Welcome back in. After Tristan Casas went, Scott, I've got bad news. You will not have Justin Steele on this team.
I know. That's who I was gearing up to take. I wanted that third starting pitcher.
Yeah, so he went 88th, followed by Jordan Walker, Emmanuel Clase, and Yohan Duran.
So after Steele went, I thought, well, maybe I will take the elite closer, Emmanuel Clase. It's been they've slid so far. Maybe it's justifiable, but then he went, and I'm not going to go for like Camilo Duvall or Jordan Romano yet. So Jackson Chorio, my fourth outfielder, some more steals.
You left some of those earlier steals for me, Scott. You don't.
You know what? We say ideally you finish third in every category. There's nothing wrong with finishing first or second in a
You
category.
can win a
You're
category.
You're
Yeah.
probably not going to actually finish third in every category.
You
are allowed to win a category. Yes.
You only need to win by one, though, Scott. Just a
Well,
reminder.
yeah. If I'm really that far ahead, I can swing a trade. This isn't NFBC.
That is true.
It's a mock draft also, so there are no trades in those. But you get what I'm saying.
Let's see what's going on here at shortstop. All right. I'm thinking about a few different things, but I got to make a decision because my time is running out. I think this is a good value for Will Smith. I don't usually draft him, but we're here 93rd overall. Just feels like it's later than it should be. He's one of those top 3 or 4 names. I think he's part of that elite class. So someone that's going to not kill you in batting average, 20 to 25 home runs. If he's batting cleanup for the Dodgers this year, my goodness. I mean, the counting stats could be awesome as well. We know he's not going to get DH opportunities with Shohei Ohtani on the team, but yeah, let's see how it works. Maybe later
catcher and relief pitcher have dropped quite a bit in this draft.
Yeah, that is a fair observation. After Will Smith, Evan Carter went 94th overall. Go ahead, Scott.
So yeah, just to give a closer comparison. So in my TGFBI league, which is 15-team Roto versus the 12-teamer we're doing now. So like I said, the first closer, Josh Hader, went in round 7. In round 7 of my TGFBI draft, the closers who were going off the board were Tanner Scott, Ryan Helsley, Clay Holmes. In round 8, where Emmanuel Clase went in this mock draft, Adbert Alzolay, and that was the only one that went in round 8. But that's how far we were into the relief pitcher pool in that 15-team Roto League versus this 12-team where the elite closers are going in round 7 and 8. And I don't think it's just a depth of the format thing. I think closer, relief pitcher, more than any other position, is driven so much by just what's happening in your particular league. People are going to be going to be followers, not wanting to fall victim to that scarcity that's being created. But nobody wants to be the first one to act. Nobody wants to be the one who sets the closer market. They want to make sure they don't get left out of it. And so a lot of times in our mock draft, this happens where the closers all drop way below what their ADP value is.
You know what other market you don't want to be left out of? First base, because they are flying right now. After Evan Carter, Spencer Torkelson at pick 95, Vinny P.
Baby.
There you go. Jinx, you owe Dick Vitale a soda. Vinny Pasquantino at 96 overall. I'll say this about Doc Eisenhower, who's drafting first overall. Get your guys, because he does not care about ADP. He's
having a good time.
He's getting his guys. Took Cole Reagans and Grayson Rodriguez at the 4-5 turn, took Wyatt Langford at the previous turn. Now he goes ahead and takes Vinny Pasquantino and the first pick of round 9, Anthony Volpe. So,
all right.
I think only 2 starting pitchers, right? For Doc. I remember.
If anyone was going to pass on Ronald Acuna, it was going to be Doc Eisenhower. He missed his chance. He missed his chance to make a name for himself.
He took Yuri Perez. So, look, it's a lot of fun on that team.
It's a lot of upside.
There's a lot of upside in that pitching staff. That's right. So after Anthony Volpe, Tanner Bybee, and Andres Munoz, and you know what? One of the best feelings in a fantasy baseball draft, when you consider taking a player in one round and they make it all the way back to you in the next round. So if anyone's watching us, you saw I pulled up Xander Bogaerts before. I thought about taking him. I said, you know what? Will Smith is past ADP. Let me take him, see if Bogaerts makes it back. And he did. So that is who I will be selecting as my starting shortstop. He will gain second base eligibility early on in the season, but I am quite happy with that selection. Bogaerts at pick 100.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping he would make it back to me. I think he should have been off the board probably a full round or 2 ago based on my rankings. So That's a little frustrating. He's another super well-rounded player who I would have liked to have had on my team.
All right, Scott, you are back up. Let's check back in on the old squad, see what you got. And Jose Altuve, Francisco Lindor, Cody Bellinger, Josh Lowe, Corbin Carroll, Jackson Trio, two starting pitchers, Tarek Skubal and Blake Snell.
Yeah. I guess I'm gonna take Chris Sale here.
Don't sound so upset about it. Jeez.
Well,
You might
there's nobody who I think, other than closers, there's nobody who I'm like, wow, this value is great. I absolutely have to take him here. I don't have a third starting pitcher yet, and we're getting close to the glob. I have recently moved Chris Sale out of the glob because I think I'm confident on a per inning basis he will perform better than a globby pitcher. It feels a little early for him, but then again, I never seem to draft him because somebody always goes earlier than I'm willing to. I thought about taking a closer, but there are still so many number ones left that just doesn't seem like an optimal use of the pick. And I didn't love my hitter options. If there was a slugging first baseman out there, I would have taken him because if I'm behind in any hitter category, it's homers. But I don't think I'm really behind in homers, and I didn't love the first base options available. So yeah, Chris Sale it is.
And I will
Another
say
strikeout pitcher.
After his first spring training start, again, we don't want to overreact, but the velocity was up 1 mile per hour. Healthy offseason, traded to the Braves, obviously. Run support should be there. If he can stay healthy for 150 innings, I think he'll pay off this value. He is someone who's on the rise, too. I've seen him going earlier in drafts, so I think that's fine. Go out.
Over the last week in NFBC, if I can pull it up real quick, Chris Sale 133rd overall. So we're around pick 100. That's still early. Don't love it.
Get your guys, Scott. Get your guys. After Chris Sale, Raisel Iglesias, another closer, and then Sonny Gray. We are closing in on Chris's team. Let's check back in, see what you got working on here, Chris. And we know that you started with the pocket aces, Garrett Cole, Spencer Strider, and since then you took William Contreras as your first catcher. You have Gunnar Henderson, Bo Bichette, Christian Yelich, Kyle Schwarber, Brian Reynolds. So you're lacking that, I guess, elite type hitter, that first round caliber hitter. But for what you've done since, I think it's kind of rounding into form here.
Yeah, I mean, look, any draft strategy is going to have some limitations, right? Scott's team doesn't have a ton of power yet. Frank, I'm sure you have some limitations, but I'm just going with what Scott just said when I was listening.
I need speed.
Yeah, you need stolen bases. Like, I think I'm missing the high-end bats for sure, but I think it's been an okay time making up for it. And, we'll see. I'm going to draft a player who I don't really love here, but he fits a need for a little more speed with Bryson Stott, fits a need to make up for a little bit of that batting average that I had to sacrifice to draft Kyle Schwarber to make up for power. So I'm really having to juggle my offense, but it has been nice to just not think about pitcher for, 7 straight rounds, which is what I've done. Because Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider, I mean, if they stay healthy, I'm going to get 390 incredible innings, and that's going to make up for a lot of flaws in anything else.
500 strikeouts from those two pitchers.
Yeah, no kidding. At the turn, RJ took Spencer Steer and Nick Castellanos. So we are into round 10. Obviously, Steer has multi-position eligibility, but 2 potential outfielders go. So starting to dwindle a little bit on the outfielders. And Chris, your backup.
This is what I don't want to do, but if everybody keeps saying, I don't want to take a closer if they're all falling, then they're just going to keep falling. We got a collective action problem here, guys, and someone's got. So I am going to take Camilo Doval, who I have ranked, 30 spots higher than where I just took him at 111, 110th overall. So I think that's okay. Slotting in an elite relief ace alongside my 2 starting pitcher aces, I think that's okay.
The ADP for Camilo Doval, according to Fantasy Pros, 69.4. You just got him at pick 110. So about 40 picks past ADP. I think it's totally fine to take him at this point. Again, we are into round 10, moving along here. As I mentioned, we're going to be staying live for the entirety of this draft. So it's going to be a little bit of a bit longer than we normally are on here, probably 2+ hours. And again, that'll be broken down into two-part podcast. After Camilo Doval, David Bednar. So Chris, you might have spoken something into existence here.
That's be the change you want to see in the world.
There you are. You know what? We're running into a problem because I think I'm also on the clock in TGFBI. It's just I can only spread my attention so many different ways.
That's a 4-hour clock, Frank. I think you can. I think people will understand if you wait.
No, they will not.
They will.
They will not understand.
People will not understand. And there you go, Chris. You did start that run. 3 closers in a row. Doval, Bednar, Jordan Romano. But then Riley Green is gone. So I know you like him quite a bit.
Riley Green is starting to creep up. I think he was I wrote biggest ADP risers. I think he was part of that discussion, comparing January to February, because he's starting to get a little more hype. I think he's going to play in games this week. Or did he already play in a game?
Yeah, he already appeared in games. Yep.
So there you go. He's fully recovered. No questions, he'll be back. And there's a lot to like about the skill set. I've certainly seen him going a little higher than expected in the last couple of drafts I've done, which is frustrating as someone who ranks him about 50 or 60 spots higher than ADP, and I still end up not drafting him.
Mm-hmm. So Riley Green went 113th, followed by George Springer and Seiya Suzuki. Great values. I considered both of them my previous pick when I took Xander Bogaerts, and as much as I like the Bogaerts pick, based on which shortstops made it back here, I kind of wish I took an outfielder. I kind of wish I took Springer or Seiya Suzuki. They're gone now. And Scott, you are on the clock.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go for a closer too, because we're about to drop out of that very big tier of number ones into some borderline number ones. But I'll take what in my mind is a true number one, Paul Sewald, which is actually skipping ahead in my own rankings a little. I have Alexis Diaz ranked ahead of Paul Sewald, but I think I've talked myself out of it since our relief pitcher preview. I see more risk for Alexis Diaz than I do for Paul Sewald. So I think I'm going to flip those two in my rankings. But Paul Sewald's my closer here, my number one. And I suspect Alexis Diaz is going to go very quickly here now that Sewald is gone, as well as Bednar and Romano and Camilo Doval.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I have Alexis Diaz as a bust too, so I don't necessarily want to. One of the gentlemen after me does not have a first baseman, so I think I might want to do that. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I took Josh Naylor. I don't know if that is the right pick. I needed a first baseman. He's another guy who doesn't hurt you anywhere. Solid batting average, 20 homers. RBI should be good. Chip in 8 to 10.
RBI should be great. He's been an RBI standout on a per game basis the past couple of seasons.
So if the drop off, there may still not be a ton of urgency to get your first closer if you have as much faith in Pete Fairbanks and Ryan Helsley as you do in Alexis Diaz and Paul Sewald, who I took. You could tier them the same. Like I said, I think they have similar upside, but Fairbanks and Helsley are pretty clear injury risks. And if you don't want to mess with that, then I think that's where you'd prioritize Alexis Diaz over them.
They're much better pitchers than him.
Yeah.
I think at least.
Alexis Diaz gets a ton of Ks.
Yeah, no, he does. And look, there is a real chance with Alexis Diaz. You know, we cite the second half numbers. It really was just September. And if you look at his usage, the Reds were really overusing him late in the year. I mean, they were trying their darndest to make a push for the playoffs, and they were basically running Alexis Diaz out there every day. So I acknowledge there is obviously a world where I am wrong about Alexis Diaz being a bust. And, you know, he just got overused last year and he bounces back this year and he's fine. But I think I'm going to just continue to wait on my first closer because all the names I usually like to target, the Iglesias, Bednars, They're all gone because Chris had to go and start a reliever run. So thanks, Chris. You didn't have to do that.
They would have been gone either way.
I don't know. I mean, I think some of the people drafting here might be watching us. So you might have spoke that one into existence. After I took Josh Naylor, Michael King, Yainer Diaz, Josh Young, and then to kick off round 11, Esteury Ruiz. How about that? The top 2 players in steals last year on the same fantasy team.
Maybe I won't win the category after all.
You might not.
Yeah, I mean, he's got. I was wondering if the person who took him doesn't have any other steal sources, but they have Marcus Semien, they have Anthony Volpe.
Wyatt Langford should.
Wyatt Langford will steal some bases
if he gets
as
to play
well.
enough. Yeah,
He has Vinny Pasquantino and Pete Alonso are they might both steal one base. But yeah, that's it's an interesting approach because you definitely don't need to worry about stolen bases ever again in this draft between those two, Semien, Volpe, and Langford.
It does seem like overkill a bit.
Yeah, and between Ruiz and maybe Young, definitely Volpe and Alonso too, there's some batting average risk on this profile that, you know, the rest of the lineup might be well-rounded enough that you can take a Luis Arias and, you know, make up for that. But there's definitely some batting average risk there as well.
I don't know how often this has worked in the history of fantasy baseball, double tapping Guardians hitters, but that is something that I just did. I took Josh Naylor in round 10. I just took Andres Jimenez in round 11. I don't typically like to fill my middle or corner this early, but I've talked about a bit of an urgency for speed throughout this draft. And I was actually debating Zach Geloff or Andres Jimenez. Geloff went the pick before, so that kind of, you know, the light bulb went off. I said, all right, let me not mess around here. Let me get Andres Jimenez, who I do suspect will steal around 30 bases this year. So obviously that helps me out in that category. And Scott, you are back up.
Yeah, I regret my last choice because Alexis Diaz is still there. I thought in half a round somebody would want to take that closer. So I regret taking Paul Sewald last time because my alternative was Zach Geloff, who did go. I still haven't. Oh, I filled second base. Okay. Yeah, I have Altuve. That's not such a big deal. Okay. And I don't need Geloff steals anyway, so I guess it's fine. I mean, I guess Yainer Diaz is who I would have taken if I didn't take Paul Sewald because he had slid a while. I tend not to take that high end of a catcher, but he went soon after I took Sewald, so I would have rather done that. But because that didn't work out, I took Carlos Rodon here in round 11, pick 125. So my starting rotation now is Tarek Skubal, Blake Snell, Chris Sale, Carlos Rodon. Bunch of lefties, bunch of strikeouts, which is how I like it. And we'll see how the rest of the staff shapes out.
Scott, did you ever play MVP baseball back in the day?
Sure.
So, you know, when you start a franchise mode, they give you the option where you could turn injuries off. Is that what you're doing for your pitching staff this year, or?
Got him.
I mean, Sale is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't put huge injury flags on most of these guys. Sale, yes. He missed so much of the last few years with injuries, but the others,
Rodon.
They've had. I mean, Rodon was hurt last year, but the previous 2 years he wasn't.
I think he throw 130 innings back in 2021.
Okay,
look,
you're right. I guess
there's a ton of upside with those guys. I'm not going to look, this is what you want strikeouts, Scott. You got strikeouts. There's no doubt about that. I'm just saying there is injury risk with each of those guys.
Okay.
In my opinion. So, after you took Carlos Rodon, Joe Ryan off the board, Alexis Diaz, Gavin Williams, Hunter Green. All right, this is a pretty fun round for starting pitchers, getting some upside here. Lane Thomas, and then Chris, you took what to me looked like the end of a tier at first base with Yandy Diaz.
Yeah, so you took Josh Naylor the previous round. Josh Young went off the board. He's a third baseman, but I was going to put him in my corner infield spot. And so, yeah, I think Yandy Diaz was really the last bankable, very good first baseman. There are a couple others that I like, but yeah, I needed a first baseman. I think he was the clear best hitter available. So that was a pretty easy call for me.
All right. At the turn, RJ White is back up, and he took Jorge Soler to finish out round 11. And then we will hop into round 12. At the end of this round, we will sign off part 1 of the podcast and then start it back up. But we're not going anywhere, obviously, on the video. We're going to stick around here. Thanks to everyone watching us, by the way. We have over 300 people watching us live. We do appreciate you. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And to kick off round 12, Marcell Ozuna. It kind of feels weird, Scott. We're in a draft where you're not going to get either Marcell Ozuna or Justin Steele. That's kind of weird for you.
The other Braves fan in the draft got Marcell Ozuna.
That's right.
RJ White, no relation, even though we're both Braves fans, apparently.
And both live in.
I think I'm correct in that he's a Braves fan. I might.
He is.
Yeah.
Braves fan and a Buffalo Bills fan for some reason. Yeah, I really wanted Marcell Ozuna. I thought this build that I had going on could use Marcell Ozuna more than most of my builds could. So disappointed to see that. I'm not loving the way the middle rounds are going here. And I think it's just happenstance. Just the players I want aren't lasting to me. I don't think it's like I did something wrong necessarily, but I am getting frustrated by it.
Uh-oh. Scott on tilt.
That's the best part. It's right on cue. Every time we do a draft on the podcast, it's right around this time.
Next Tuesday night, by the way, we are going to be doing a live auction salary cap draft. And that one we're actually playing out this year. I mean, if you want to see,
we always play it out,
entertaining Scott White After Dark, you're going to want to stick around for that one because those are always a good time. After Marcell Ozuna kicked off round 12, Chris, you finally jumped back in with a starting pitcher, Justin Verlander. I'll come back to you in a second. Chris Bassett after that. Jackson Holiday, 136th overall. Francisco Alvarez, Cedric Mullins. Chris, I was wondering when you would jump back in on starting pitcher, and the answer is round 12, Justin Verlander.
And that's pretty much what I say when I'm doing the two aces strategy is I won't take another starting pitcher until around the 12th round. And whether Justin Verlander specifically was the right one, given the concerns over his shoulder and the fact that he's not yet ready to face live hitters, although he is throwing off a mound without issue. You know, it does seem like there's a decent chance he opens the season on the IL. But hey, with Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole, I can afford to take a little bit of an injury risk there on a guy who should give me good innings. It's just a question of how many innings he will give me.
After, what was the last pick? I think Alvarez, Cedric Mullins, Walker Buehler, 139th overall. And Scott, you are back up. What are we thinking?
Jake Burger. I have a third base opening. I have a power need.
That's perfect.
It's so obvious. I can't believe I didn't do it last round. It is hard to keep track of the team you're building while also putting on a show for everybody here. So, so I can sympathize with you there, Frank, on that front, even though I'm not having to do nearly as much work on the entertainment part as you are.
I think you're very entertaining, Scott.
You're doing a great job, Scott. Don't doubt yourself.
Like as far as building my team goes?
No,
it's horrible. No. Okay.
I was going to say at both, but Chris just went ahead and dunked on you. So there you go.
I will say, not my pick, but Jackson Holiday at 136, 4 picks before my Jake Burger pick. I think that's closer to where he should be going than where he's been going. I think the chances of him making the Orioles roster are 80%. And I think we're at a point already in this draft, round 12, where I don't like a lot of what I see at shortstop. So if I didn't have Francisco Lindor already, I probably would have taken Holiday with my previous pick where I took
you would have taken him over
Carlos Rodon instead.
You would have taken him over Dansby Swanson?
Is Swanson still out there?
Yes.
Yeah.
In a 12-teamer, I'd think about it. In a deeper league, no, I think I'd play it safe.
Because his ADP in NFBC leagues, I wrote the ADP risers and fallers on CBSSports.com today. Since the start of February, it's up to 180. So he's one of the biggest risers. But
Holiday?
Jackson Holiday, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to say anything
Yeah.
else about
I
that.
thought there was
yeah,
more.
no, this is still a little ahead of that, but
Right.
I think 140-ish is probably going to end up being pretty reasonable for him.
Well, I mean, if we find out March
Yeah.
15th, March 12th that he's made the roster,
Whoop.
he's probably getting pushed inside the top 100,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, probably. If not there, then close to it, I would say.
Mhm.
After you took Jake Berger, I went ahead and took Bailey Ober, who is a pitcher I am pretty excited about. And this is what I like to do typically is get 3 of my top 30, wait, and then I'll jump back in on a bunch of players that I wrote up as sleepers or breakouts this year. Ober, if Scott had not taken Rodon, I probably would have considered him at this point as well. He might have been taken by someone else anyway. But yeah, Bailey Ober as my SP4 at this point. I do like that quite a bit. After I took him, Shane Bieber, Max Muncy, and Sean Murphy. So we are through 12 rounds. Here's what we're going to do. On the podcast side of things, we're going to sign off part 1, and then we will see you on the other side for part 2. Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball today, part 2 of our live 12-team Roto mock draft, and we are into round 13, where Luis Arise was the first pick, followed by Pete Fairbanks. Cool. Definitely was not thinking about taking Pete Fairbanks myself. I do not have a closer yet, and my top 4 pitchers are Framber Valdez, Jesus Luzardo, Zach Eflin, Bailey Ober. It's not typically how I build it.
I think it's pretty good.
I got 3 of my top 30. These are just not the 3 of my top 30 I usually wind up getting. I think it's fine. Obviously,
No, I think
Bailey Ober. So
you might be a little light on strikeouts. That's the only thing. But I think it's a good balance of ratio guys for sure.
after Luis Arise, P. Fairbanks, Bryce Miller, and here we are in round 13. Kind of regret taking Will Smith because there are catchers here that I like.
There's a reliever drop-off looming too.
There is a reliever drop-off looming.
I think we're at the reliever drop-off.
Helsley's still there.
I think
Craig
that's the
Kimbrell's
one
there.
left, or great one left.
Tanner Scott.
I don't love it. I'm going to just go ahead and I need a third outfielder. I'm going to go ahead and take Ian Happ. Not sexy by any means. He's just going to
He's good looking.
Multiple things. Oh, yeah, he is a good looking guy. 20 homers, 10 steals, solid counting stats. He's going to hit around 250. Again, he's kind of like a high floor pick. He's not going to blow you away in any categories. I needed a third outfielder, so he's kind of the cutoff for me, where I like to have 3 outfielders by this point in the draft. Maybe I'll regret it, see who comes back to me in terms of the closers. But yeah, I did want to grab Ian Happ. And Scott, you are up in round 13. After you make your pick, we can run through your team and see what it looks like.
Okay. I think I think Chris gave me the idea to go ahead and take Dansby Swanson here as my middle infielder because he's going to give me runs and RBI, healthy home run total, a useful steals total. Not that I really need them, but
you need steals. You got to compete.
And just less risky than like Nolan Gorman and Brandon Lau. Some value picks that I like at middle infield, but I don't know. Swanson's lasted too long, and I feel like there are a lot of pitchers out there I like still. So I don't feel the need to add to that group so much. Felt like I needed another bat more. My outfield, I already got 4 of them, so I don't have to settle for like an Ian Happ type, which is great.
Whoa! Shots fired.
Well, you didn't sound thrilled about the pick yourself.
Jeez. So I don't have to settle for the Ian Happs. I would say I think Ian Happ and Swanson, they're probably going to provide very similar.
Yeah, very, very similar production. Yeah.
Yeah. So take that, Scott.
Swanson's does it more reliably than Happ does. Happ did it last year. I'll give you that.
2 years in a row, he's been solid. Anyway, I was going to prop up your Swanson pick before you made fun of my pick, but Swanson's ADP on Fantasy Pros 124.4. So you got him about 2 rounds past his ADP. I do think that is a good value.
Shoot.
All
right. Both Mitch Keller and Merrill Kelly went since that pick. I was hoping to get one of them the next time around.
Gosh.
Nobody's cooperating.
No, they are not, because I wanted Eloy Jimenez later in this draft and he went as well. This is not a good round. Anyway, let's catch people up. I took Ian Happ. Scott took Swanson, Mitch Keller, Eloy Jimenez, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Merrill Kelly, Evan Phillips, and Chris, you took Jarren Duran. So there is some risk. I understand he's coming back from the toe
Mhm.
surgery. They delayed his start to camp. It does add a little bit of an element of risk. But man, if he's hitting leadoff and everything kind of works out, 15 plus homers, 30 steals, I could see it for Jarren Duran.
His numbers out of the leadoff spot, it was only 36 games. They were pretty bonkers. He hit like 290. I'm not expecting that, but I think it was like 25 runs in 36 games. It was like a 20 homer, 50 steal pace. It's for a guy who had playing time concerns last season, that would be pretty huge if he actually got to bat leadoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like that will be the case. I believe earlier in camp, Alex Cora didn't specify that would happen, but he kind of hinted at it, that he wants Jarren Duran to be the leadoff hitter for the Red Sox. At the turn, it was Jordan Montgomery and Rhys Hoskins. And then, Chris, you took Brian Hayes, Wilson.
I wanted Rhys Hoskins.
Yeah. Some good hitter values at this point, too, because, again, like, I took Will Smith around pick 90. Wilson Contreras just went at pick 159. I like Will Smith. I like Wilson Contreras at pick 159 a lot better.
Yeah.
So
then what? Pick 90?
Around 90, I think 90 or 95, something like that. So
I don't know. I think Will Smith's run and RBI production is going to be.
It should be
a higher order of magnitude. I think he did fine. I think he did well. I'm simply pleased.
Yeah. He's trying to make up for it for making fun of my Ian Happ pick. I appreciate it.
I am just an honest analyst. I have no bias for or against you, Frank. If anything, it's for you, though.
All right. I appreciate that. After Wilson Contreras, Chaz McCormick, Christian Javier, and Kodai Senga, 162nd overall.
If I hadn't taken Verlander the previous round, I would have taken Senga there.
Yeah, I was going to take Senga too, because Mitch Keller and Merrill Kelly already went since my last pick. So it's like it was one of those turns since I took who was it? I took Dansby Swanson with my last pick, because it's like, oh, there's all these starting pitchers I like. Oh, there's all these slugging first basemen I like, Hoskins and Christian Encarnacion Strand. I can let the back half of the draft narrow down that group for me, so that I don't have to feel like I'm reaching for one. But it didn't happen. They just took all of them. They just took the whole group of players I was considering. And now I could take a middle infielder I like, because they didn't take those. Bunch of jerks.
I love Scott on tilt. That's great. All right. So after Kodai Senga, Tyro Estrada goes, and Scott, you're up.
Well, I don't love taking catchers, even in a 2-catcher league. I'm fine scraping the bottom of the barrel, but because everybody took all the players I was interested in at all the other positions that I could still stand to fill out, I'm going to take a catcher. I'm going to take Cal Raleigh, who plays so much that he gives you a bigger RBI and run total than the average catcher, and very likely to lead the position in home runs, which I could use more of than stolen bases. Not that I think I have a home run problem really, but I definitely don't have a stolen base problem. So if I'm leaning one way or the other, it's for home runs. So Cal Raleigh at 164, that's the pick.
All right. Well, I am debating taking my second catcher. Do I want to do that? I don't. I'm looking at my team. I need corner. I need outfielders. I only have 4 starting.
You have Ian Happ. Don't forget.
I hope Ian Happ's going to have a monster year. You guys watch. I think I need some pop. So what I want to do, and this is kind of unconventional, but I'm going to go ahead and take Nolan Gorman. He's someone I like a lot. It's going to fill my utility spot a little bit earlier, but I need some pop. He's one of the last guys I see available that's going to maybe give 30-plus home runs. So we talked about him on the second base preview. I wrote him up in Breakouts 2.0. He technically broke out already last year. He's just not really being treated that way. So
I'm absolutely adding him to my Breakouts 2.0, which I think comes out next week. And yeah, I was literally in the process of dragging him into my queue and then he just disappeared.
Well, that makes me feel better about the pick. So let's go. All the StatCast data, by the way, everything supports that Nolan Gorman is a legitimate slugger.
Really good against lefties.
Yeah, he was good against lefties last year. It's a really small sample. I think it was 86 plate appearances. So he's got to do it again. But I also don't think the Cardinals have that luxury of a bunch of great bench bats that they can afford to bench Nolan Gorman against lefty. So I think he's going to play every day, which obviously should help with the counting stats. After Gorman goes, one of the players I love, Brian Woo, goes off the board here, round 14 at pick 166, followed by Lars Nootbaar. Somebody I like. Maybe I don't love, but I liked him last year. I like him again. Don't forget about Lars Nootbaar. I think I need some pitching. That's what I'm looking at next. I don't know if it's going to be a starter, if it's going to be a closer. It's not going to be Yu Darvish because he just went. That's the end of round 14. Made a spring debut just the other day, and so far so good. I know it was only two innings, but he had a couple strikeouts.
He got hit around a little bit, I think, but it was like 5 singles and 2 doubles or something.
Darvish, I think he only gave up like 2 or 3 hits over 2 innings.
I remember. Okay. But his price is definitely rising. He's one of the bigger risers since the start of February.
Yeah.
Just he's healthy is the biggest thing.
I think similarly to Riley Green, Chris, with both of those guys, Darvish and Riley Green, and I said this when we did our position previews, I just wanted to see those guys healthy in camp, right? And now that people are starting to see that, I think we're starting to see them move up draft boards a little bit, and maybe rightfully so. We are kicking off round 15 here, and how about a reminder to sign up for the FBT newsletter if you haven't already? CBSSports.com/newsletters. You click on that FBT logo, you punch in your email address, and it's as easy as that. It's free. Chris does a great job with it. If you are watching us on YouTube, I was going to say scan the QR code. I don't have it up because the draft board is up instead. So don't do that. Go to CBSSports.com/newsletters. The first pick of round 15 is James Outman, a little power and speed, lower batting average, followed by Ryan Pepio. And then TJ Friedl, who I wrote up in Bust 1.0. His ADP is typically around 150. And we're 20 picks past that, about 2 rounds. So look, there comes a point where every player is a quote unquote value. That might be the case here with TJ Friedl as well. So remember how we talked about Ryan Helsley like 3 rounds ago? I'm just going to go ahead and take him.
That's a phenomenal value
as my first closer. And you know what? He's not somebody that I like to target. I worry that he missed time with a forearm injury last year. He throws so hard. His first spring outing, his fastball velocity was down 3 miles per hour. Everyone was losing their minds. Well, he pitched today on Wednesday, and the velocity was back up. He averaged 98 miles per hour on his fastball. Not exactly where it was last year, but I think what happened the other day is, okay, his first spring outing, and he's just slowly getting built up. There's injury risk, there's no doubt, but if he stays healthy, Ryan Helsley could provide 90, 100 strikeouts, 25 to 30 saves. So at this point, pick 172, I think that's fine. And Scott, you are back up.
Yeah, I think I might take a closer here, but I might not. I might take a bit of a rotation stabilizer here, since, as you pointed out, there's some injury risk with my top 4 starters. I'm going to take Jose Barrios.
I love it.
High floor play, should still give me about 180 strikeouts. So it's not like he's a negative for that. ERA and WHIP are going to be middling, but at this stage of the draft, middling, particularly if you have concerns that some of your pitchers aren't going to be available. I think middling is perfectly acceptable, and just kind of a stabilizing pick.
After you took Jose Barrios, Salvador Perez at pick 174. Again, that is a great value. You called it, Chris. Earlier in this draft, catchers and relievers, those turned out to just be the values consistently throughout. So good for those who took advantage. After Salvador Perez, Hunter Brown, Bo Naylor, Tommy Edman, and Stephen Kwan. And I believe, well, Chris, you were back up. You are no longer up because you took Shota Imanaga, who I was thinking about taking. So great.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to comment on the Stephen Kwan pick, but I have to research that a little bit. So go ahead.
Chris,
you want to talk about your pick, Chris?
Yeah, I look. There's definitely risk with Shota Imanaga. He's a extreme fly ball pitcher. His fly ball rate last season, or his home run rate last season in Japan was like 1.1 per 9, which doesn't sound that bad. It's 0.7 is the average in Japan. So if you applied how much worse than average he was in home runs per 9 to the major league average, he would have been like 1.5. It's a legitimate red flag in his game, but he also might be a Kodai Senga-esque source of strikeouts. You know, he might get to 190 and 160 innings. He's got that kind of upside. So I think he's super talented. And with the floor that I've established, I was willing to take that risk. And this worked out perfectly. I was getting very anxious the like 5 picks before mine because I wanted these 2 guys. And I got them.
For the hashtag brand, baby. Byron Buxton at pick 182.
Honestly, might be the best power hitter left. Or might have been the best power hitter left before I took him. Obviously, on a per game basis, I think him and Stanton are clearly the 2 best power hitters left. And I think Byron Buxton's a legitimate 30 home run threat, even if he only plays 110 games. He would have to play 110 games to do that, something he does not do ever. Yeah. But he's healthy right now.
Well, he is, and that's good. Christopher Morel, who went right after him, I
was going to say
there's a case for him being the best power hitter left. So is Mitch Garver. Mitch Garver going right after Christopher Morel.
I was hoping Mitch Garver would come back to me the next time around.
I did want to comment on a couple of picks that other people made. Stephen Kwan pick. I wondered if that was for Ryan McLaughlin, and I wondered how if he felt like he needed to make up ground in batting average. And his first 2 picks were Aaron Judge and Matt Olson, 2 players who could give him a good batting average, but it wouldn't be surprising to see them hitting the 260 range either.
Yeah, probably more like average.
I think that makes sense. And then at the end, RJ White went with a pair of closers, Clay Holmes and Tanner Scott, of course, good value because all the closers have been good values. And he already had Devin Williams. So he is taking advantage of the discounts to just dominate the category, which I think at this point you can't any reason you might have for taking a closer is probably justified.
Yes, indeed. So after Christopher Morel and Mitch Garver, Eduardo Rodriguez, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, there you go. Back-to-back Mets outfielders. And Scott, you are back on the clock. I will say this before I throw it to you. I think I messed up again.
Uh-oh.
I should have
You're
taken
good at that.
I should have taken Imanaga. I should have taken him, man. I needed strikeouts on my team, and then as soon as
that was the biggest concern when I added him to my queue was getting past you.
And you know what? Look at the closers that are still here. I mean, look, Helsing could turn out to be fine, but if I got Imanaga last round and then I got Kimbrel now as my first closer,
you won't get Kimbrel now because I'm taking Kimbrel.
All right, that makes me feel a little bit better, but gosh, I do like me some Imanaga, so that's a great pick, Chris. And I'm a little sad that I didn't make it myself. As you mentioned with my pitching staff, I do think I need a little bit of strikeout upside. I've got Framber Valdez, Zach Eflin, Jesus Luzardo, Bailey Ober. I think ratio should be okay. I've been making a lot of picks lately on the behalf of Scott White.
Okay, that's what I thought you were going to do.
I need a little strikeout upside here, so I'm going to go ahead and take Nicky P, baby.
Yeah, I had just added him to my queue as well.
Nick Pivetta.
He was at the top of my queue after I took my second closer, Kimbrel. Based on the build, I didn't have to prioritize Pivetta as high because I had a lot of strikeout pitchers already. But I would have taken another. I would have taken another if he lasted one more round.
And I was scared you were going to take him, Scott. Thank you for taking Craig Kimbrel. That made me feel a little bit better. So works out, get some strikeouts on the pitching staff there. And right after that, Jared Kelenic at pick 190, who will be an everyday player for the Braves this year. They confirmed that. Not looking at a platoon. He's just got free reign. Let it go. So hopefully the Braves can help
Kelenic and forget it.
Yeah, hopefully they help Kelenic figure it out the way that they have with some of their other hitters. I wanted to talk about this earlier, but there was just so much going on. Michael Harris, this is another one of my spring overreactions. So far, the guy looks awesome. And there was already a lot that I liked about him. We spoke about that on our outfield preview. He improved in all the ways we wanted to see last year against lefties. lowered the ground ball rate, improved the plate discipline, hits the ball hard. He's fast. He's in a great lineup. Now it looks like he's going to bat sixth. I know you just wrote your all FOMO team, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Harris is on my all FOMO team right now because I don't have any of him, and that needs to change in the month of March.
Yeah, I mean, he played primarily ninth. He batted primarily ninth last year, and if you just a useful way to think about it is every lineup spot is usually worth around 18 to 20 plate appearances over the course of the season. And that may not sound like much, but the move from ninth to sixth, that might represent like a 10% increase in his production across the board. Just in terms of playing time, let alone more guys on base, better hitters behind, or I guess not better hitters behind him, but certainly get more opportunities for RBI. And so if you think he's a 75 guy, all of a sudden he's probably an 82 to 85 RBI and run guy. And he probably steals a couple extra bases. So it really, a 10% increase across the board in counting stats, that would legitimately matter.
Mm-hmm. After Jared Kelenic, Jamer Candelario, I think another great pick this point. At the turn, Doc Eisenhower took Charlie Morton and Kerry Carpenter. I just wrote him up in Breakouts 2.0.
Yep.
I know he's been dealing.
Queued him up as my fifth outfielder.
I think he's dealing with a hamstring right now, but he's been progressing. I think he's going to get into games soon. So
hamstring, schmamstring.
Yeah, you don't need those things. And then after that, Kyle Harrison, who is starting to grow on me a little bit as well. And Nate Lowe. I am on the clock. I have 3 outfielders. What else do I need? I need a second catcher at some point. Corner. I think I'm going to do something that Chris is not going to like.
Interesting.
Let's see.
On
the edge of my seat.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and take Tyler O'Neill as my 4th outfielder. It gives me a little power and speed, assuming that he can stay healthy. Love the move to the Boston Red Sox, entering a contract year. Fenway just seems like tailor-made for Tyler O'Neill. So obviously need him to stay on the field, but if he does, I think we can get 25 homers, 10+ steals. Kind of fits with what my team needed as well. So happy to get him. And Scott, you are up in round 17.
So I have a few options I'm considering here. Starting pitchers. I only have 2 pitcher spots. So I'm inclined to wait there. By ADP, this guy has fallen a lot. It's a corner infielder. And I'm looking at how many teams still need corner infielders, and I'm looking at the corner infielders left, and that's feeling like a scarcity right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take Alec Boehm, who should be a nice source of batting average and RBI at this point in the draft without being a bad source in home runs and runs. And I think part of the reason that corner infield scarcity has emerged is because guys like Nate Lowe and Jamer Candelario. I think you took Brian Hayes recently, Chris, or was that a few rounds ago?
Yep.
A few rounds ago?
That was the last turn, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I would have preferred Hayes to Boehm. Boehm feels more like a floor pick, but I don't like – there's like one other corner infielder who I think I'd be satisfied slotting into my starting spot there, and I didn't want to miss out.
No name dropping.
Okay.
I am one of those teams that needs a corner infielder.
There's a lot who do. It's crazy.
Yeah. Let's see. After you took Alec Boehm, which I think is another great pick at this point, he, I believe, made his spring debut on Wednesday, had 2 hits, including a home run. So off and running is Alec Boehm. After he went, Willie Adames, Nathan Eovaldi, Jack Sawinski.
Interesting.
Masataka Yoshida, I think, is a pretty good value at this point. Gives you a good batting average and solid counting stats in the middle of that lineup. Chris, you're on deck. Any thoughts? Any ideas?
I'm trying to figure out whether it's time to take another reliever or not. And that's the thing that I'm really working through right now.
2 or do you have 1
I
or
only
2?
have 1 right
Okay.
now. I have Camilo Duvall. So I still have 4 pitcher spots left to fill. We've got, I think, 7 rounds left. So I'm going to pull the trigger on a guy that nobody seems to want, but I don't really have that many concerns about him. And take Kenley Jansen, who he's been, as far as I can tell, he's mostly just been throwing off flat ground as he comes back from that lat injury. I don't think Kenley Jansen really needs a lot of time to get ready for the season, I wouldn't imagine. He's still been a really good closer. Trade rumors, I don't really worry about it because I can't imagine Kenley Jansen's getting traded somewhere where he's not the closer. So I think that's a great value. Obviously, every closer has been a great value in this draft.
You know what I've thought about, Chris? And this is just pure speculation on my part. I haven't seen it anywhere. Wouldn't a Dodgers reunion make some sense?
Yeah, I think that's been, I don't think it's been rumored, but I've definitely seen it suggested that that would make sense if they want to. I mean, I think they just dumped a decent amount of money with Manny Margot's contract. So
yeah,
they might, maybe.
They might be gearing up. That is a place where if Kenley went there, though, I know he has the history. Evan Phillips has been really good. I don't know if he would be the closer.
Maybe this is not accurate, but Kenley Jansen has never not been a closer, basically since he became one. I don't think there's been like a 3-week stretch in Kenley Jansen's career since he became the closer where he wasn't. So that's the one where I have a hard time seeing him putting on a good face as a non-closer, I guess.
All right, let's hit a quick break. And when we return, we'll catch you up on the end of round 17 and Chris's latest pick. We'll do that right after this.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. Our live 12-team Roto mock draft, and we are into round 18. We left off. Chris took Kenley Jansen. Now, this is fun. RJ last turn double-tapped closer, and then this turn, he double-tapped catcher. So to get his 2 starting catchers at the 17-18 turn and them being Logan O'Hoppe and Gabriel Moreno, that feels pretty good. I kind of like that for him. After that, Chris, you took Nestor Cortez, Brendan Pfaadt, Kyle Bradish. So a little bit of a pitcher run here. And Nestor Cortez made his spring debut just the other day. He gave up some hits. I think he gave up a couple runs. But what was encouraging, Chris, was that the velocity was back up, coming off the shoulder injury. I think it's encouraging to see that for Nestor Cortez.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy where velocity is not the huge concern that it would be because he's already a fairly soft tosser. And I think he's more about the deceptiveness of the pitch and the arm angle that he throws it from. So, you know, you want to see him get through spring healthy and make sure that his mechanics are okay. But he was so good basically for 2.5 years before he got hurt that I'm pretty confident that he's going to be good as long as he's healthy. Obviously, there are significant concerns, but just on a pure talent level, I think it's an obvious discount here. It's just, can he stay healthy is the big question.
Yeah, and that is definitely a fair concern coming back from a shoulder injury. Obviously, no joke there for starting pitchers. After Kyle Bradish, Edouard Julien, Tristan McKenzie, and another, I think, pretty good catcher value, Keibert Ruiz at pick 211. Scott, you are up.
Mm-hmm.
What are we thinking?
Well, there are I've said before, there are 17 catchers that I feel like I would be satisfied with as my starter in a 1-catcher league. We are down to 2 of those in a 2-catcher league. I already have 1 catcher, Cal Raleigh. I'm going to go ahead and take a second here in Jonah Heim, who I think I was down on him early in draft prep season because he overperformed his expected. The StatCast page isn't that impressive, but he plays every day in a top 5 lineup. And even with the amount of time he missed to injury last year, he had 95 RBI. I don't know that he's going to have 95 RBI again. That's a tall order. But if he gets 80, he's so far ahead of the catcher pack in RBI. And I think it's highly plausible in that lineup. I've come around to Jonah Heim. Not that he's a top end catcher, but I find that I'm preferring him to, I don't know, to like Logan O'Hoppe when that wasn't so much the case at the start of draft prep season. I just think there's a higher floor there with Heim.
And you helped make my pick, Scott, because I was debating between a few different positions, and I agree. I think after Jonah Heim, there was one left, in my opinion, Luis Campusano, before we kind of see that teardrop. So I went ahead and took Campusano. I noticed a couple of teams after me here at the beginning of the draft did not have a second catcher yet, so I wanted to get Luis Campusano. That's exactly what I did. The only thing I'll say about him is I saw a few clips of him in spring already. He's got this weird batting stance thing going on. I don't know. I've got to look at last year.
He's got this Tony Batista. I don't know.
Yeah, wide open.
If I'm aging myself there, but yeah.
So weird. Oh, gosh. It was kind of weird.
So he basically stands straight onto the pitcher. He's like holding the bat up in front of his face, like I don't know, like the way Idris Elba's character in Thor holds that sword, you know? And then he, turns in as the pitcher comes into the plate, exactly like Tony Bautista. I did look at his stance last year. It might be slightly more exaggerated this year, but it was basically the same stance last year. And obviously he performed well. He was a great hitter throughout his minor league career. So I don't know that that's a red flag, but it is interesting for Luis Campusano.
So something to watch, I guess, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse than it is right now. After Luis Campusano, Mason Miller, who we're hoping is the A's closer,
although I did see a quote that kind of put some cold water on that, at least right away. It was more like, we want him ready for 2 to 3 innings. We're not just going to throw him in the closer's role right away. Unfortunately, I still think he's a fine pick, but more probably for a bench spot or a 15-team league.
That was not a great turn. So
we have the same players queued up.
Oh gosh, I do not have a second closer, and I passed on a few of them.
Well, that's what happens when you let Adbert Alzolay go like 80 picks past his ADP. You had a lot of chances to draft.
You had so many chances.
I did.
I don't think you can't complain about it.
No, it is my fault. I messed up again. That seems to be a theme of today's mock draft.
You suck again. Yeah.
Well, let me think about what I want to do. Can one of you guys talk about all the picks that just went?
Well, JD Martinez was the other one I was groaning about, because we had that debate a couple rounds ago. Is Byron Buxton the best power hitter left, or maybe
Scott,
it's
can you
Christopher
pause
Morel?
the draft and restart the team, please? I'm sorry.
Maybe it's
might be JD Martinez.
It was obviously JD Martinez. It was on his 162 game pace last year was 46 home runs. And he doesn't have a team yet, so he's another one sliding because of that. Also sliding from his DH only status. I had my DH spot open, and I was just crossing my fingers people would continue to overlook him, because I felt the catcher need was more urgent. I felt the corner infield need was more urgent. But just from a pure statistical level, JD Martinez would have been the preference there for sure.
There were, I think, 5 awesome picks in a row just now before Frank, who took Aaron Savali and ended the run.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
I had Savali high in my queue for a while.
But Jake Holland took Jung-Hoo Lee, who I think sounds like he's going to bat leadoff, play center field every day for the Giants. I think he could be a very, very good source of batting average and runs at the top of that lineup. Then Colt Keith, who I'm surprised there's not more hype around. He's going to be on the opening day roster. He's a highly ranked prospect who performed well at the highest levels of the minors. Doesn't really have a ton of red flags.
Just such a killer.
Tough park, and he doesn't run. So
and he doesn't produce particularly high end exit velocities either for his production, as productive as he was in the minors. And so I just think it's a bad combination.
Sure,
at that park,
you're still talking 216 for a very talented young player.
It's fine.
Adbert Alzolay, I think, just phenomenal value at 217. Jose Alvarado right after him, great value as well. I thought that was a very good run of picks.
Yeah, it really was. And obviously crushed me because I did want a second closer there. I took Aaron Savali.
Why did you take Leclerc? Why is everybody so afraid of Jose Leclerc? I don't get it.
Well, there is competition there. I mean, David Robertson has closing experience.
It's funny. This is an aggregation gripe, because in the same article the aggregators were citing where Bruce Bochy was saying there's a bit of a closer competition. Within that same write-up from the Rangers beat writer, what was the exact sentence for Leclerc? I don't have the exact sentence written down, but within that same story, it said Leclerc will likely close a lot of games this year. So
But is that just a beat writer writing that? Like
well, the whole
speculatively,
thing was
or-
a beat writer writing it, and just the aggregators picked one part to focus on.
There were quotes from Bruce Bochy where he would not name a closer. I mean, he said that he wants one to emerge, but those are actual quotes. And
But he said there will be one. I mean, it's it's 80-20. It's probably going to be Leclerc. I mean, there's a chance it's not, but it's not like David Robertson is, Josh Hader. It's David Robertson.
He is not, but I think they gave him a decent amount of money for a 1-year deal too. So it's not like he's getting paid nothing. They gave him 1 year $5 million. That's not great. It's less than I thought. Actually, no, 1 year $11.5 million. That would change things. $11 million. That kind of sounds like a guy who could be a closer. So
it's actually a 2-year deal, $10 million this year with a $1.5 million buyout for next year and a $7 million mutual option. So it's 1 year at least $11.5 million.
Okay, well.
Also, that dude has made...
That's money, man.
If that mutual option gets picked up, David Robertson will clear $100 million for his career.
Shout out to David Robertson.
Isn't that bonkers? That is wild. Way to go, David Robertson and his agent.
Look, it very well could turn out to be Jose Leclerc. I would put the odds at a lot less than 80-20, personally.
I mean, clearly, but I have yet to see a justification for that makes sense to me. Given the way Bruce Bochy himself handled Leclerc in the playoffs last year, like he was his most trusted reliever, even with Aroldis Chapman on the roster, and he came through.
That
Obviously,
he did.
They won the World Series.
Will he come through again this year? We shall see. After Jose Leclerc, Taylor Ward, Anthony Rizzo, J.P. Crawford, Robert Suarez, who, Yuki Matsui's dealing with a back injury right now, so hopefully he's all right. And just when I say that, Yuki Matsui goes off the board. After Robert Suarez, there was Parker Meadows. Chris, just phenomenal pick. Trevor Story, pick 227. I mean, I am internally kicking myself for taking Andres Jimenez whenever I did, because, I mean, if you told me I could get Trevor Story past 200, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
I had him crossed out. I thought he was gone already. That's funny. I wonder why I did that.
He is gone to Chris.
Maybe I meant to cross off Thairo Estrada. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, he was drafted a long time ago.
Yes,
yeah,
he was.
I crossed him off.
After Trevor Story, Braxton Garrett and Nick Lodolo at the 19-20 turn. Chris took Yusei Kikuchi, his boy, followed by Yuki Matsui, Justin Turner, Shane Baz, Carlos Correa, Isaac Paredes, and Scott, you were up. You let out a groan. I don't know which player that was for.
Yeah, for them all. They all.
Not for Kikuchi.
No, it was for, I just got sniped with Isaac Paredes. When I said I needed a corner infielder and there were only 2 options I liked left, I actually needed a first baseman still at this point. That's how distracting this draft is. So I still need a corner infielder, and Isaac Paredes was the last one I would have felt satisfied having as my starter. I'm going to take a bat here because I still need 2 total. I need 3 total, actually. But I'm going to take the one that I think is the best left, Brandon Lau, for my utility spot.
Yep. And that means it's up to me. I need a corner. I need an outfielder. I need 2 relievers. There's none of those left, so might as well just wait. Let's see. What does first base look like? Not the best. Third base, not the best.
Have you made all your picks? Did you get skipped somewhere?
Me?
I'm just razzing you.
You're crapping on my team, aren't you? I'm going to go ahead and take Ryan Mountcastle. I think my team needs a little bit more pop. He obviously has great StatCast metrics, but unfortunately,
pray for a trade.
Right-handed hitter in Camden Yards, so probably going to be kind of capped at around 25 home runs, but I do think that's achievable. I agree, Chris. I think he would be a great trade.
It would be the best case scenario for everyone, right? Like they got so many guys that were waiting for playing time.
Yep.
You know, Heston Kjerstad needs playing time. Like let's get a Ryan Mountcastle to I don't know, Miami.
The White
trade
Sox.
Going. Oh yeah, White Sox would be great.
Why not?
I was just trying to be selfish.
Yeah, but that actually does make a lot of sense, Chris. So I need you to get on the phone with Peter Bendix and make that happen. All right, let's do it.
I mean, they did listen to me about Tim Anderson. I've got some pull.
You do have some organizational pull. After I took Ryan Mountcastle, Emmett Sheehan, who has been slowed because of general body soreness. I don't think it's anything too concerning, but based on Walker Buehler likely to start the year on the IL, if Sheehan is healthy and ready to go, I do think he's going to be in the Dodgers rotation to start the year. After he goes, Giancarlo Stanton. Sorry, Chris.
I already got Buxton. I can't do both.
Why not?
It'd be unfair to the rest of the league.
Yeah, you don't want to dominate everybody. Well, there goes another closer, Alex Lang, or at least we think. I saw he got rocked today. Not that it matters. Spring, but
He will be the closer at the start of the year, unless he turns up hurt or something. Now, whether he'll stay the closer, I think is very much in question, which is why I rank him behind Jose Leclerc, Yuki Matsui, Mason Miller, guys who are less certain of being the closer.
And there are other names in that bullpen too. That's what adds to the fire there with the Tigers is that Jason Foley has pitched well. I think Will Vest has some strikeout upside. I've talked about Shelby Miller as a really deep speculative closer this year as well. When they signed him, they kind of talked about that he has the stuff to play up in the back end of the bullpen. So we'll see. I think there's a chance for some other names there in the Tigers bullpen. After Alex Lang, we're into round 21. Will Smith. That's a missed opportunity. Another one. I could have had both Will Smiths. That's fun. That would have been great. Brendan Donovan, Jorge Polanco. And I'm back up. I did see a name that kind of interests me. He's dealing with a shoulder thing right now, so I don't love that. But I'm going to take Robert Stevenson, who, if he's healthy, I think he's the best reliever in their bullpen. They just gave him a huge contract, 3 years, $33 million. And Carlos Estevez, don't want to overreact. It's one spring outing. His fastball velocity was down 3 miles per hour on Wednesday.
For what it's worth, he had the same thing last spring, and I think he got crushed in the spring. Like, he had like a 12 ERA or something last spring.
So bad last spring, and then he went out and had 31 saves. So this might not matter at all for Estevez. And they look, to their credit, even after signing Stevenson, they've said Estevez is the closer. So we'll see how long it lasts. But
he will be the closer. Ron Washington was clear about that, and there were some reasons why he may have struggled. He wasn't entirely healthy in the second half. He made the All-Star team, right? Did Carlos Estevez? He was pretty good in the first half, but the history with control, I mean, obviously his history, much of it was in Colorado. You give him a pass for that, but the control history is not great. And Robert Stevenson was arguably the most dominant reliever in all of baseball after joining the Rays last year. So I do think between the two, Stevenson's the one to target. In the long run, he'll have more saves than Estevez. But it's not a certainty. It's not a certainty.
No, it is not. But at this point, there are very few, if any, certainty.
No, it's a fine pick. Don't get me wrong. I'm just
I'll
saying you can't take it to the bank. That's all.
After all my bad picks, I would hope I get a few good ones in there. And there you go, Chris. You went ahead and took Estevez.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Maybe I would have taken him and just had both on my team, but it's all right. That's fine.
That is my favorite reasoning. Why not?
After Robert Stevenson, Scott took Sal Frelick, who's been getting some games in at third base. That's kind of interesting. Christopher Sanchez, Jonathan India, Alex Kirilloff, Ryan McMahon, Austin Wells. Chris took Carlos Estevez. And then at the turn, Brandon Drury and Dalton Varsho. I think fine picks. Drury has middle and corner. He's probably one of the safer bets left to give you 25-ish home runs. And Dalton Varsho, a little power and speed, but going to come with a low batting average. And Chris, you took Max Kepler, who I know you wrote up in Sleepers 1.0. Statcast data was awesome last year. He kind of looks like he figured something out. And
yeah, traded some contact for power. He was always someone who pulled the ball in the air a ton and made up for middling quality of contact metrics by maximizing his launch angle and pull angle and all that. Last year, he was still doing all that, but he also had by far the best quality of contact metrics of his career, even more than that. He had like a 34 homer season back in 2018 or 2019. But it was, the quality of contact metrics were by far the best of his career. And I, for the most part, buy it, especially when it's, my second to last pick for a guy that I think legitimately does have 30 homer upside in Max Kepler.
After Kepler, Griffin Canning, who I've come around a little bit as well. I think some sneaky strikeout upside with him. Tyler Stevenson, Chris Paddock, Gary Sanchez, Lucas Giolito, and Scott, your second to last pick. Who is it going to be?
Well, I want to comment on that Lucas Giolito getting a 200 strikeout guy this late. I mean, I understand the downside risk. We all do. But they've worked to fix his slider. They thought he needed to throw it harder, and he's been doing that this spring. That may be a fix. I mean, he was able to get strikeouts even without that fix. I don't think he's a total lost cause, is Lucas Giolito. But I'm going to take a man who's replacing him in the White Sox rotation, somebody I try to get every draft, Eric Fetty, to round out my pitching staff. I did want to comment a little on my last pick, though, the previous one, Sal Frelick, because I don't think it's something we've talked about much. You mentioned Frankie's getting some action at third base this spring. Also, second base is on the slate for him. And the Brewers don't have a starter at either of those positions. And they could fill out an outfield without Sal Frelick. I think it's possible he winds up being the starter on the infield for the Brewers rather than in the outfield. Or more realistically, he'd be a super utility player who played every day, bouncing between the infield and the outfield, sort of like Spencer Steer last year. So that's some handy versatility, in addition to potentially being a batting average and steals specialist late, is Sal Frelick. I'm thinking he's a pretty good sleeper.
Yeah, I like that call a lot on Sal Frelick as well. I think what happens next for the Brewers is if he starts somewhere on the infield, or even if he just bounces around, it's probably bad news for Joey Ortiz and or Tyler Black, right, Scott?
I'm going to guess Tyler Black begins the year in the minors. Before they acquired Ortiz, there was some talk about how they wanted him to win a job. But then since then, we have this news about Frelick moving to the infield, at least part-time, and they acquired Ortiz. My guess is Ortiz plays most days. Bryce Terang maybe is on the roster as a reserve, maybe not, and Tyler Black in the minors. But Sal Frelick and Joseph Ortiz, that's always listed in our database. Joey Ortiz, those two would occupy an infield spot for the Brewers more days than not. If I had to project that here on February 29th, that's what I'd do.
Whenever I hear somebody call somebody named Joe or Joey by the name Joseph, it sounds like they're in trouble. Joseph, get over here. Yeah. What are you doing? After Scott took Eric Fetty, I took Kyle Finnegan, yuck, as my third closer. Jason Dominguez, Andrew Abbott, Mackenzie Gore. And here we are, the final round. But let's take a quick break, and we'll talk about it right after this.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Welcome back in the final round of our 12-team Roto mock. And here we are. Alejandro Kirk, Ryan Jeffers, and Garrett Mitchell, the first three picks of round 23. To your point, Scott, about Sal Frelick, if he plays in the infield, that opens up more time for Garrett Mitchell, who a lot of people had as a sleeper this time last year.
Yep.
Very sneaky speed upside there. So I do.
And Joey Weimer. Joey Weimer struggled as a rookie, but I think there's power speed upside there still. So you can understand why the Brewers would do it if Sal Frelick proves capable of handling it.
And I am going to round up my team. I need a fifth outfielder. This is someone I've talked about who I think has a little power and speed, like a 15-15 projection is what I would expect. Leody Taveras with the Texas Rangers. He is a great defender, so I don't worry about the playing time. I think they want that defense in center field. Obviously, they're trying to figure out how to get Wyatt Langford in there as well. But assuming Leody Taveras doesn't just fall flat on his face and he stays on the team, I think he can go 15-15 with a, not harmful batting average, somewhere in the 250 to 260 range. Scott, you were up with your last pick.
So I kind of screwed up corner infield because I forgot I hadn't filled first base yet, but that gives me an opportunity to do something I've always want to do and never have an opportunity to do just because the spot's always filled. I'm going to take Michael Busch here, who I've loved for years, ever since the Dodgers drafted him. And he's already penciled.
He goes so late.
Nobody wants him. It's I feel like he had more interest last year
100%.
when he probably wasn't going to make the Dodgers opening day roster than this year when he's probably in the Cubs opening day lineup. So it's, in theory, I'd like to draft Michael Busch everywhere. It rarely works out for me to take him though.
Yeah, I did a deep sleepers for every team for tomorrow's FBT newsletter. So that's Thursday morning. And he qualifies. I did the ADP outside of the top 350, but he's like 400 right now. He's basically not being drafted in most leagues.
Yeah. After Michael Busch, Jose Abreu, who's another one. I mean, the last round of the draft, I know he was a disappointment last year, but if he's batting fifth for the Astros, still going to be lots of RBI opportunity there for him. After that, Shea Langoliers, Brian Abreu, Reese Olson, DL Hall, and Chris, you just took your second catcher.
Yes. And Scott, I don't know if this guy made your post-type sleepers column that you wrote last week or 2 weeks ago, but
he did.
I feel like we're writing off Tyler Soderstrom a little too early. He was a much ballyhooed prospect this time a year ago. He is one of those catchers who will likely play a lot at DH or possibly first base. He is becoming, if I'm waiting on that second catcher, he's kind of becoming my go-to there.
And the last pick of the draft, Mr. Irrelevant.
Very relevant.
Not
very
so
relevant
at
is
all.
Mr. Irrelevant.
This is a great pick, and I think we all just kind of slept on it here. And Jackson Merrill, who, as the days go by, looks increasingly likely to be on the Padres opening day roster. Still lots of spring left, but so far so good.
And it would be as an outfielder. So he'd pick up eligibility at that deep position to go along with his natural shortstop eligibility, which is great. I moved him up in the rankings quite a bit. I don't know why he didn't cross my radar. I guess Jeremy Payne. No, I have him ahead of Jeremy Pena. I don't know what happened. But yeah, I feel like Jackson Merrill should not have been Mr. Irrelevant. So good pick there by RJ White to end the draft.
Yeah, should not be going that much later than the other Jackson. I mean, Jackson Holiday should be going ahead of him, but we're talking about what ended up being 150 pick difference between the two of them.
Should be more like a 50 pick difference, I would say.
All right, let's quickly just run through our teams, give a quick thought on them, and we'll go in reverse order of the way we drafted. So we will start with Chris's team, who obviously went with the pocket aces to start the draft with Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider. But let's quickly talk about your offense here, Chris. William Contreras and Tyler Soderstrom at catcher. You've got Yandy Diaz, Bryson Stott, Gunnar Henderson, Bo Bichette, Trevor Story, and Ke'Bryan Hayes in your infield. Christian Yelich, Max Kepler, Kyle Schwarber, Brian Reynolds, Jarren Duran in the outfield, and Byron Buxton is your utility bat. Do you want to talk about your offense or read off the pitchers too? And then we'll talk about everything.
Well, I mean, you already mentioned that I paid up for Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole in the first 2 rounds. And while it's obviously probably not the best offense in the league, I think it came together okay. I was able to balance the 5 categories. If anything, I'm probably weakest at RBI and runs.
I thought it was just the opposite, actually.
Okay,
I thought there seemed to be a home run and stolen base shortage because you get the first 2 rounds for hitters, but you actually did a good job of keeping pace with runs and RBI. I mean, Yandy Diaz, not going to get you a ton of homers, but batting leadoff for the Rays should be good runs and RBI. Christian Yelich is kind of in the same boat there. Brian Reynolds kind of in the same boat. Bo Bichette kind of in the same boat. So I think you did a good job targeting players who are going to be safe sources in those counting stats, but you just couldn't make up for the home run and stolen base upside that you missed out on early. Which isn't to say, you're going to be last in home runs and stolen bases. I mean, for stolen bases, the Trevor Story pick, the discount you got there, could be real nice.
I think I'm in better shape in stolen bases than I am in home runs. Probably, I'm probably closer to middle of the pack in stolen bases. In terms of projections, I'm probably a little further behind on home runs, and so I do need like my optimism around Byron Buxton and Max Kepler to come to fruition, and our shared optimism around Ke'Bryan Hayes, like that Yandy Diaz avoiding a step back in power, Tyler Soderstrom emerging as a 20 homer guy, which he's done pretty much every year in the minors, but obviously last year in the majors was very, very poor. So I had to take some swings, but I think overall I'm pretty happy with the way it came out, in that I obviously didn't make an ideal investment at the hitting positions early.
Let's talk about the pitching staff. You started your team with Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole. You got Justin Verlander as your third starting pitcher, followed by Shota Imanaga. You got Nestor Cortez, Yusei Kikuchi, and then your closers, you've got Camilo Doval, Kenley Jansen, and Carlos Estevez. So obviously you got the two anchors. You waited a little bit, but then still wound up with some upside guys too, Imanaga and Nestor Cortez later on. I think the pitching staff is great.
Yeah, I feel very, very good about the ratios. I think the counting stats are a little bit of a question, but obviously 500 strikeouts between Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider will go a long way to paper over any flaws there. And I think, obviously, given the sacrifices I had to make at hitter, I can't say that going Strider Cole was the ideal strategy from the number 11 spot, but it's doable. You can definitely make it work. And honestly, it might have worked even better if I had just gone for more of the boring, maybe not great ratios types, but with, decent projectable volume guys. I do wonder if I would feel better about it if I had, I don't know, Jose Barrios probably went around Shota Imanaga. Would I feel better if I had that? Maybe. But all in all, I think it was a valiant and viable experiment. I wouldn't hate playing this team out, honestly.
All right, let's slide over to Scott's team. He was drafting 5th overall in this one, and we'll start with the hitters. And at catcher, Jonah Heim and Cal Raleigh. In the infield, Alec Boehm, Jose Altuve, Jake Berger, Francisco Lindor, Dansby Swanson, and Michael Busch. In the outfield, Cody Bellinger, Josh Lowe, Corbin Carroll, Jackson Chorio, and Sal Frelick. Brandon Lau at utility. And then your pitchers, Scott, you took Tarek Skubal, I believe it was in the 4th round, as your SP1. And then you loaded up on a bunch of strikeout upside. You got Blake Snell, Chris Sale, Carlos Rodon, Jose Barrios as a stabilizer. You got Eric Fetty, your boy, the wandering eye. And your closers, Paul Sewald, Craig Kimbrell, and Jose Leclerc.
Yeah. I like it. I think I wish my having Alec Boehm at first base and Michael Busch at corner infield, I think you look at my starting lineup and it's like, okay, well, you could have done better there. But I feel like I'm so strong everywhere else. And it's not like, look, Boehm's a must-start player in this format. I like Busch's upside. It may not work out, but it may work out. I certainly have enough speed. I pretty confident I have enough power, because about the only guy who isn't projected for 20 to 25 home runs, at least 25 home runs in my mind. The only one who's not going to give me that is Sal Frelick. So yeah, I think I have plenty of hitting, and the pitching, there are some injury risks there, but I shouldn't struggle to keep up in strike. Even if that top 4 misses some starts, Skubal, Snell, Sale, and Rodon. It's a bunch of S's there. Even if they miss some starts, I'll be very high in strikeouts, I feel confident saying. And so whether I compete in ERA and especially WHIP, I think WHIP is a little more worrisome than ERA. Depends on, if they're as effective as we think they can be. And I don't necessarily need all of them to be as effective as there can be a bust among that group of 4. But yeah, I think it's a high upside staff. And that's what I'm looking for in this globby world we're living in, is to give myself a chance of excelling in the most predictable category, strikeouts. And if you do that, you're probably going to have a good amount of upside in ERA and WHIP too. And I got plenty of saves there, but 3 closers in my mind. Leclerc, okay, you could argue whether he's a closer, but he's the 3rd one. So yeah, I like how this team came out.
Usually we save the best for last, but let's take a look at this train wreck that I put together. And the catchers, Will Smith and Luis Campusano. In the infield, Josh Naylor, Ozzie Albies, Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Andres Jimenez, and Ryan Mountcastle. In the outfield, Mookie Betts, that would be his name, Tyler O'Neill, Ian Happ, Leody Taveras, Randy Arozarena, and Nolan Gorman as my utility bat. And then on the pitching side, I've got Framber Valdez as my SP1. I took him in round 5. So I started this draft with 4 hitters. Then I took Luzardo as my SP2. I've got Zach Eflin, Bailey Ober, Aaron Savali, Nick Pavetta. And the closers need some work. There's no doubt about that. Ryan Helsley, Robert Stevenson, and Kyle Finnegan.
I mean, look, if you have to have a weakness,
yeah,
closer's the one to do it.
I think the offense actually came together pretty well. I don't know. I'm looking at it now. Obviously, it's kind of hard to track everything while it's going on, but I don't really see a particularly weak player at any of the starting spots. Maybe I'm a little light on speed.
Yeah, maybe. You have like 5 guys or 4 guys who could give you between 15 to 20 steals. And if they fall short of that, if a couple of them fall short of that, you might be in some trouble. I'm thinking like Ozzie Albies and Randy Arozarena.
Yeah.
Jimenez is good. Jimenez might give you 50 the way he performed in the second half. So that would help a lot if he exceeds expectations by that much. That's Andres Jimenez, by the way. Yeah.
I kind of like the way that it worked together. Obviously, it started the draft with 4 bats, so I would hope the offense looks pretty good. Maybe should have prioritized speed a little bit more. I know CJ Abrams lasted a little bit longer, so should have been paying attention to someone like him. The pitching staff, this is typically what I target. 3 starting pitchers in my top 30 rankings. Then I wait a little bit, and then I jump back in, and I think I did a fine job with that. Again, the closers, some work needs to be done, but I kind of like the way that it turned out. Let us know. What do you think in the YouTube comments? Drop a comment. Let us know who you think dominated the draft.
Frank, you are projected to win.
Is that true?
I just did the math. You are projected to win.
Are you messing with me or?
No, I'm not at all.
Oh, we just got a draft recap. My draft grade was a D.
You are projected to dominate the hitting stats, though.
There's some conflicting information.
You are projected to finish 4th or better in every hitting category.
Okay.
And that carries you most of the way.
How did you do that math?
I got Excel, baby.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris.
What projections were you using?
CBS projections.
All right. So that's
the easiest one to go with.
Yeah.
Sure. CBS. I'm surprised you didn't, because I think the Byron Buxton projection is 39 homers. That one's going to have to be scaled down a bit.
That one boosted me up.
That is a lot of home runs. All right. Thanks for everyone that's sticking with us here. Still over 300 people watching us. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.